Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
Let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine. What I'll do is like the SITREP report going around. Now, there was a question that popped up earlier about where's the $40 billion go? The $40 billion, it's $39.8 billion, pedantic. Where is that money going? So the first thing is there's $11 billion of that, which is to replenish the United States inventory on stuff that we've already given to Ukraine. So 11 billion of that 40 billion is actually just going back to the United States. So now we've got 29 billion, if we're using round math. Now we got 29 billion. 11 billion of that 29 billion is going to more weapons for Ukraine. And they're being cagey on what that means. Now, we do know that it means more M777A2 artillery. It's another, 18 is a battalion because 6 make up a battery. So 18 is another full battalion. 6 M777A2 artillery pieces make a battery. A battery is kind of a company. 3 companies make up a battalion. So it's a full battalion of artillery pieces. Also then, of course, the trucks to tow that artillery and all the equipment, carry the crew to go do their artillery thing. There's supposed to be a ton of Humvees because this is something that Ukrainian military desperately needs. They need vehicles just to move stuff around. They're having some logistical problems. The Ukrainian military, they are swimming in material, war material. What they're lacking right now is just the physical trucks to move it the last mile. What I mean by the last mile is to move the stuff literally to the front lines. There we go.
Hey.
Hello. I'm sure you've been hearing, like we were talking about, kind of going around the horn here, but I was answering someone had asked the question where the 40 billion's going. So that's what I was diving into right now.
Awesome. It is quite late here, guys, so I apologize, but I really wanted to hop on here because this is actually one of my favorite creators. I don't know if you know this, but I wanted to let you know in person. Yeah. So I have been following. I've been having difficulties with my phone.
They do that. If technology was easy, I wouldn't have had a job in corporate America in another life. So 11 billion is going to weapons, Humvees, artillery, and then there is stuff on. Where did mine? Oh, okay. It's like, why did my screen just die? Some of this is going to advance weapons, and the United States isn't clarifying what those advanced weapons are. There is a lot of rumors on what that is. We don't like dealing with rumors. It does sound like that they're going to get some very advanced anti-ship weapons that are more than the Neptune and more than the close-in shore weapons that were provided by the UK. UK didn't provide the Harpoon. Harpoon is ship to ship. I know a lot of people, they're getting Harpoons. Harpoons aren't land to sea. Harpoon is ship to ship. But apparently the United States is getting ready to send something. And that seems pretty carved in stone that they're going to get some top-of-the-line anti-ship land to sea stuff. What that is, I don't know. There is a ton of rumors, and I can't stress it's rumor that Ukraine's going to get Patriot missile systems. The problem isn't that the United States hasn't wanted to give them the Patriot missile systems. The problem is you just can't give the Patriot missile system to somebody else. Here you go, have fun. It takes a lot of training on how to operate those systems, and that's been the barrier. So the part that we don't know is, have Ukrainians been getting trained over the last 3 months on how to use the Patriot missile systems? Obviously, if you put NATO troops running those systems, you've changed the game, right? It's kind of a nope. So there's a lot of, they're going to get Patriots, but we don't know. And I think the rest of it is speculation. So now we've accounted for 22 billion of the 39.8 billion. The rest of that money is economic aid, and it isn't just for Ukraine. It is, some of it's for Ukraine to help them rebuild, help stabilize their economy, help them continue to pay public service, help them continue to provide just a basic functioning government, because it's kind of hard to collect taxes and operate a government when you're under war. But then there's a lot of it there that's going into food aid for other countries, because this is something I'm going to get up here tonight and say, I was wrong. I dismissed this as an issue 4 months ago, and I'm going to say I'm wrong. And the issue of the wheat shipments and the grain shipments that are blocked, this is a big problem. I dismissed the doom and gloom before the war started because, in my view, we went through this before. We heard this in 2015 with rice. Oh, the world's going to run out of rice in 2015. The rice harvest has collapsed. People don't want to ship rice. India's like, we're not going to ship our rice out to anybody because we don't have enough rice. And the world was going to starve to death because we had no rice. And people panicked, including here in the United States. And everybody, all of a sudden, everybody wanted to eat rice. And you couldn't find rice anywhere. And it spiked the price. And did anybody starve to death because they couldn't get rice in 2015? No. There was enough rice. So when all of this about the wheat, I was like, I've heard this before. Yeah, this is a big problem. This is a really, really big problem, particularly in Africa. Countries like Eritrea, Sudan, Mali, Madagascar, the Democratic Republic of Congo. These areas in Egypt, are really in trouble. Pakistan is going to have a big problem. I didn't realize, but Pakistan gets about 40% of their wheat from Ukraine and another 40% from Russia. So Pakistan's going to have a huge, huge problem. There's already been riots in Peru, and people have been unalived in those riots, and there have been riots in Sri Lanka. And those are more related to inflation, because the United States inflation rate is like one of the lowest in the world right now. Turkey, their inflation rate is 69%. Sri Lanka, they're rioting in the streets. Their inflation rate is 22%. National, their food inflation rate is 27% a month. Yeah. And this is why they're rioting in the streets. This is a huge problem with the grains. And I was wrong on that. And this is and the other problem that you have, South Africa and Namibia, which actually produce Namibia. One of their biggest exports is agriculture. They produce a ton of food. Crazy thing. The only reason I know this is because we traveled to Namibia. I filmed a documentary there in early 2020. Yes, I know old school malcontents are like, when are we going to see this documentary? I know it's still in post-production. It's like, it's going to be in post-production forever. No, there's actually people lining up to help us get that out of the ditch. They grow their own apples. Like, we were at a grocery store and their apples, and I was like, oh, did these come from Washington State? And it was like product of Namibia. I'm like, they grow their own apples? I was like, oh yeah, it's apple season right now. And they were damn good. They produce a ton of agriculture. Those two countries had some of the worst locusts that they've seen in 25 to 30 years. and it's just wiped out their crops. And then India, because of this record heat, it really damaged their wheat crop right before harvest. India's bit was ridiculously hot. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we produce a ton of food. Washington State farmers lost a lot of what they planted this spring because it was so cold. A lot of the seedlings that they planted were wiped out, completely wiped out. Asparagus farmers are wiped out, and there's a lot of asparagus grown here in Washington State. Obliterated. They lost everything because it got below freezing and it snowed just as all that asparagus was sprouting. So food's a problem. Code 200 discharges yeeted, left the planet, no longer among us, shuffled off their mortal coil. Somebody's asking in the comments.
I wish we could see each other's comments.
You can't see the comments?
I can't see your comments. I can only see the comments under my live.
Really? That's that. Well, TikTok, you need to fix that. Let's see here. Set me a microphone. If they're getting Patriot systems, can you tag me in the video comments when it believe me, if we confirm there's getting Patriot missiles, there'll be a whole TikTok and a written story and all of it. That's to be a big deal if Ukraine is getting Patriot missile systems. So this is what's going on, right? We'll start with Severodonetsk. We'll start there. I think I've gotten better with my pronunciations because I found a tool that's really helped me with the pronunciations, but I can't use it on the live. So I'm probably going to murder names again because I'm not going to be 1 minute here while I practice saying this for a couple of minutes. But I've said Severodonetsk now for 2 months, so I've got that one really down. We'll start there. Severodonetsk itself, it's just a big artillery battle. This is like World War I or World War II grade siege warfare at Severodonetsk itself. Neither side is really moving. That front is pretty active. Russian forces are maybe every 24 hours are gaining ground. And when I say Russian forces, I say that very broadly. That means it's Russian, Chechnya, DNR, Donetsk People Republic, LNR, Luhansk People Republic, and Wagner PMC. So if I say Russian forces, that's just a big lump. If I know that something is specific, I will say they're Chechens or Russians. But if you hear me say Russian forces, it's a big bag. Yeah, they're gaining ground every day, but this is measured in meters. Basically what's happening here, big artillery barrage, artillery stops, going to rush into the area where we did try to do artillery. We're going to try to take that territory, big fight. Everybody loses a lot of people, both sides. Ukraine's losing a lot of people too. Maybe Russia moves up 100 meters, maybe, and then they all kind of fall back. And then Ukraine does counter battery. They fire a bunch of artillery back, and then they jump over. This is what's going on, and it's not just in Severodonetsk. And if you're like, this sounds awful, you're right. This is horrible warfare that is going on, and we have not seen warfare on this scale of this type in 70 plus years. You probably have to go back to the Korean War to have like old school trench warfare. I know there was some conflicts like in Vietnam where there was some stuff where it was more kind of European, but that was the outlier. There was a lot of kind of fair trench warfare during the Korean conflict also. And that's really the last time we've seen it on this scale. Now, Rubizhne, that situation there hasn't changed. So Rubizhne is weird, right? May 12th, Russia says, we captured Rubizhne for the 532nd time. And Ukraine says, yes, this time they're not lying. They actually captured it. And then the Russian forces tried to do a river crossing at the Seversky Donets by Kreminna, and it was a disaster. We don't hear about this one as much because this disaster happened right about the same time as Bilohorivka was sucking out the news cycle. Everyone was talking about Bilohorivka, so we didn't hear about this other bridge crossing. That also was a disaster. And so now we get to March 13th, And Russian state media goes, we don't have full control of Rubizhne, actually. We have about 80%. And Ukraine goes, they're right, actually. Yeah, we took 20% back in the last 24 hours. Ukraine appears to still have kind of that 20% toehold. It's pedantic, I get it. It's contested. If we go further south, and we're still several next, now we're going around, Popasna. This is going to be really important over the next 2 to 5 days. This is not the war. Well, this is why I say this is complicated. In a lot of ways, Russia has more at stake in Popasna than Ukraine does. So Russia had a breakthrough. We said that yesterday, and that's been in our situation reports. By the way, I'll pimp for our situation reports. We produce a daily situation report. We haven't done 2 this week. You're getting a live tonight instead of a situation report. So there's 2 we missed this week. If you subscribe to our Patreon, it's $5 a month. That's it, $5 a month. You get our almost daily situation report. They're generally 25 to 40 pages. And we fact check a ton of stuff. So we wrote about this, and there's maps. It's weird. I don't know if have you ever used maps in your TikToks?
No.
If you use maps, what we found, you get less views. Doesn't make any sense. I know people are, we want more maps. We've done really map-heavy TikToks, and they get like literally a fifth of the views of the other. And
you know what? I have used a map. I actually showed a real map, of a Soviet map that I got, and it was the first Soviet map I acquired. And that video actually received about 100,000 views.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of views. That's viral.
But it wasn't like an overlay. It was an actual map. So I wonder if that makes a difference. I know that TikTok has been suppressing my content and content of people who do similar content as I do. I wonder if it's because the interest is towards the wars dying down, which would be natural. But I also wonder if they're suppressing it because they kind of want to brush it under the rug.
I don't know. That I don't know. Why won't it let me? Sorry, I was playing moderator. I was playing moderator for a minute. I don't know. Maybe I got to look here and see if I have some friends here. I need to might have to promote a couple. But give me a pause here. What's a Yugoslavia? It was a country once upon a time. And now it's like 5 countries. Is it like 5 countries, right?
Yeah, it's 5 countries.
And they had a terrible, awful, bloody, just horrific. This was probably the last really horrific war on European soil. And there was flat-out genocide attached to that between Croatia and Serbia.
Yeah.
I make maps for a living. This would have been my dream job once upon a time. We already talked about Biden, the 40 billion. It was like the first thing we started talking about. I literally just talked about it. You can go back and watch the replay. Back to Popasna. So there was a breakthrough. So in military terms, you got a line. They broke through. Russians have broken through. And they are doing the classic, once you get the breakthrough maneuver, which is you spread out in all directions. The idea is you want to push that opening wider so that you can push more troops. They are attempting to cut off the main highway, meaning Russia, that is supporting the troops, the Ukrainian troops that are at Severodonetsk. And they are in a position where they can contest that highway around. So artillery, they can hit this highway with artillery, but they've been able to take pot shots with artillery on this highway now for a couple of weeks. It's gotten a lot easier. There are some sources that are overstating the position of Russian forces here. Like there were some people earlier today, they've run all the way across the other side. And I was just like, we could only hope that they were that stupid that they did that. We could only hope, because they would have stretched their supply line so thin. There's no way they could have maintained that line if they moved that fast. War doesn't work that way. War is about logistics. If you outrun your supply lines, you end up with Kyiv. That's part of what happened in Kyiv. They couldn't establish supply lines, and I'm not going to rehash all of that because we've talked about that many times in other videos. So they're doing this. They are spreading out. The word is that the units so far that have been doing this are not battalion tactical group size because they are so depleted. Something that I don't think people fully understand here is for the Luhansk Oblast, for Severodonetsk, the Russian forces, they are all in. The best analogy I could use, if you ever were watching a poker game and you see a person and they're kind of losing chips and they're kind of losing chips and they're kind of losing chips and they look at the card, maybe a little glint appears in the eye and they push all the chips on the table and they go, I raise you and I call, which then of course means when they put the cards down, they're screwed if they don't win. But if they win, they're going to win big. And that's what Russia's doing in Severodonetsk. They have moved troops from the Izum front. They have moved troops out of the Kharkiv front. They have moved some troops out of South Donbass. They've put everything into Severodonetsk. And what they're trying to do is capture Luhansk. If they can do an encirclement, that is just a bonus. The word is that this fanning out is not battalion tactical group size. It's company size, 200 men, 250 men. And they're not all Russian. These are hybrid units. So they are so depleted. This is Russian Special Forces, VDV Airborne, are heading these leads, but they have had to integrate into the VDV, Wagner PMC, Chechen, LDR, Luhansk People's Republic, and DNR, Donetsk People Republic militias into those units to cobble together a couple of hundred people to go in and move into these villages. And this is what we've been writing in our situation reports. Can Russian forces overwhelm the Ukrainian positions? Absolutely. We've been in Severodonetsk. Yes. We've been saying this over and over again. Can Russia hold those positions? It's one thing to run them over. It's one thing to go into a town and go, we kicked them out. Here's their TikTok video. Chechens are really good at this. But it's another thing to then go and we control it. And not in the military sense. Because you could say, like, for instance, you could build an argument that Russian forces control Rubizhne. They control it in the military sense. So what the military sense is, people can't walk around the streets. Ukrainian forces are not going to be driving around town going, hey, what's up? But on the other side of the coin, a mortar shell or an artillery shell or a machine gun fire or an airplane can come in and, drop a bomb or fire a missile at any second. So it's not secure. Like, people hear they captured and people think, oh, so people can move back in. No, that's not what that means. And that's kind of the state of where Popasna is and where these other little villages are, that they have this very tenuous control over. Now, full stop. Russia has about 5 battalion tactical groups that they had staged east of Popasna. I should have had the list with me. I actually had the unit list. And the word is they're moving them in now into that breakthrough. But here's the thing. This is what I meant when I said they're betting the farm here. That's their reserves. That's it. So this is all or nothing. If these 5 battalion tactical groups cannot move and either not just take that highway, but hold it. It's one thing to get to the highway and go, yay. It's another thing to hold it. And I don't mean hold it for a day or two. They're going to have to hold it for a couple of weeks. If they can't do that, or they can't get that encirclement, then this offensive on there is in trouble because there's nothing left. Well, it's not true. They have 70 battalion tactical groups. Yeah, they had 105. They're down to 70. But they're in other areas. You just can't take the 5 battalion tactical groups that are in Kherson and go, okay, we need you over here now. Because as soon as those 5 battalion tactical groups leave Kherson and nobody's left, what's Ukraine going to do? They're going to walk right into Kherson. So they have 5 battalion, technically 5. I'll get into that in a minute when we get to Izum. They technically have 5 in the western flank of Izum. They used to have 3, they added 2 more. Same thing, they can't remove any of those. They yank those out, even 1. Ukraine's going to run over that western flank. So yes, they have 70, but most of them are real busy right now doing other stuff. This 5 that they're pulling into, that's the reserves. There is nothing left. So they're betting the farm here. If they push Ukraine out or they get an encirclement, they have to hold it. And they're going to have a hard time doing it. Not impossible. I'm not saying it's nope. I'm just saying it's going to be hard. Is this the war? Like, they encircle them, they cut them off, and they hold it. Is the war over? Ukraine's defeated. They captured Luhansk. Golf clap. Because remember, what was the whole thing? We want to decapitate the government, and we want to demilitarize, and we're going to block your ports, and you're just going to be what they call a rump state. We're going to put in our puppet government who does whatever you tell us to do, and that's it. And you basically cease to exist as a country. And then it was like, okay, that's not going to work. Okay, we want the South and the East. Okay, that's not really working either. We're going to hold on to the land bridge, and we want the Donbass. Okay. Wait a minute. Let's back up. That's not working out really well either. We want the land bridge, and we want Luhansk and the parts of Donetsk that gives us the land bridge. Right? They keep lowering the bar because they don't have the forces. So that's the problem. But this is going to be a really difficult 2 to 5 days for the Ukrainian forces, and Russia has more to lose here. Because Ukraine is building reserves, getting ready to push reserves in. What if Russia mobilizes? If Russia mobilizes tomorrow, they don't have boots on the ground for 8 to 12 weeks, right? Because they got to.
Not just that. I know that there's a really popular misconception on TikTok, primarily, that that a lot of Russians support this, and that's true to an extent. There are Russians in Russia that absolutely support Putin and absolutely support what's going on, but the young people, statistically speaking, will realize that something is horribly wrong if Putin does mobilize the country, and the chances of those young people wanting to go to and die. Or, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say that without us being banned. Yeah. And
Code 200 discharge.
Yeah, exactly. Gruz 200. Exactly. And no, that's going to signal that something is extremely wrong. And that's going to signal not only to young people, but to Russian population that Putin is lying about how well we're doing in Ukraine. And I don't believe that there will be a mass mobilization unless something really terrible happens.
Yeah. So Ukraine does not have 1 million troops, but Ukraine said they're going to mobilize 1 million people, and they have started this mass mobilization. But it's the same thing. It's going to take them months to mobilize these people. And everything that you just said is spot on, because we're already seeing this. People are in Russia are like, yay, Russia. What's this letter? Oh.
Exactly.
I have bone spurs. Let's see. Bone spurs work for that guy in the United States. I'm mentally. No, wait a minute. They're taking people who are mentally unstable. I have a really bad limp and I'm blind. I need to find a lawyer to explain that to the recruitment office. Everyone on this is like, yay, until the letter shows up, and then they're like, I thought someone else was doing this. You're talking about what's going on. I know in Sevastopol that they really have lost the people there. If you've lived in a military town, like if you're listening to me, it doesn't matter if you live in a military town anywhere in the world, regardless of the nation, military towns are tight and people talk to each other. It's a fraternity. It is a club. If you were a spouse, if you're a family member, or you're in that military. And when the Moskva was sunk and Russia lied through their teeth that there was only one Code 200 discharge and 27 people they can't find, which everybody knew, like, come on. That was a slap in the face to this military brotherhood, sisterhood that these families have. And Sevastopol has been a military town since the 1600s. This has been a naval town. And the trust that was destroyed there over them covering up what's happened with the Moskva has been incredibly damaging in that community in the port. And they're just not having it. And they're like really questioning on everything that's going on. I mean, look what's going on with Igor Girkin, I know I can't say the T word, a very bad individual involved with shooting down a commercial airplane with an international warrant out, and generally was like, yay, Russia, up until like this invasion started. I mean, Igor Girkin is probably giving the most honest assessments on what's going on out of everything that's there. We've been reading his assessments now for like the last 3 weeks, and I'm like, what happened to our timeline? When did Igor Girkin become like one of the most accurate people in the world on, hey, this is what's going on, and I'm just going to lay it out. And look, if you like support Russia and our whole, we want our liberation of the Donbass thing, I'm going to piss you off. But I'm a patriot, and patriots tell you the truth. And he's a monster, and he should answer to court of law, and go away forever for what he did with Flight MH17. But I always give credit where credit is due. And he is a patriot, because a patriot is not my government right or wrong, my politician right or wrong. Yes, you know what he just said is totally insane. I don't care. It's my person. That's not patriotism. Patriotism is questioning when your leader says something nuts, or you're like, dude, that's like a lie.
Yeah, and I think that the lack of criticism in Russia is what keeps leading to dictators and absolute leaders in Russia. I mean, Russia has never been free, but the lack of criticism is really what propels these dictators to stay in power in Russia. So I totally agree with you.
So why was Russia finally successful in Popasna? You got to remember this. Russian forces have been trying to capture Popasna since 2014. So this was 8 years of trying to capture Popasna. And it just became sheer why were they successful? Because they destroyed the town. Just what they did in Rubizhne. They literally destroyed Popasna. There's nowhere left there's nowhere to have a position. There's nowhere to go, okay, we're going to go in this building, because the town is destroyed. There's nothing left to defend. It's defending rubble. They've captured rubble. And so this was just a decision of, this is not tenable. And so that's why there was success. Severodonetsk breaks my heart. And I know sometimes when I go, oh, it was a beautiful city, there was crushing poverty there. There's a lot of beautiful cities on this planet where you could go and you will find crushing poverty if you know where to look, in every city on this planet. Hong Kong is a gorgeous city, and there's crushing poverty in Hong Kong. And I could go on and on and on. That doesn't happen in cities like Tulsa, which is run by Republicans. Yes, it does. There's poverty trash places in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And yes, I've been there more than once. Fabulous steaks there, by the way. This is not a thing about politics. My heart breaks for Severodonetsk was a gorgeous city. Absolutely gorgeous city. Beautiful architecture. Ancient architecture there. It is gone. And this breaks my heart, because this isn't liberation. Liberators don't destroy factories, schools, power plants, water treatment plants, electrical grids, colleges, libraries, museums. Liberators don't destroy these things. Liberators venerate these things. How if you're coming in to save these people, how is it by destroying everything that they are dependent upon to just exist. This is an extermination. That's all this is. Look what the leadership of the Donetsk People Republic, look what they admitted. 60% of the buildings in Mariupol are so badly damaged, they're just going to have to be torn down. Azovstal metallurgical plant, so badly damaged, there is no repairing it. We have to tear it down. This is win. This is a W. That's the win. We have rubble. Did you see the videos where they tried to turn the water back on in the city?
No, I haven't.
Where the Russian FSB apparently, like the administrators of the city, not the deposed administrator, but the current people from the Donetsk People Republic that are the administrators of the city. The Russian FSB is actually really trying to run things there. There's a lot of friction right now. They're like, turn on the water. The pipes are all broken. We can't turn on the water. We need the propaganda. Turn on the water. Okay, you said turn on the water, and the streets are just all flooded. Of course they are, because the water mains are all destroyed, because the city's just cratered. They turn the water back off. So that's their W. All right. So Popasna, we've talked about that. We're going to keep going around. So we'll head down south. So now we're getting to Hordlavinka and Donetsk. By the way, roast me if I say any of these things wrong. Roast me, by the way.
Oh, it's okay. No, your pronunciation has actually gone better. I've been listening to your videos for a long time now. I'm gonna have to jump off. It is extremely late, but I'm so happy I caught you.
I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, if you guys don't follow him already, for any one of my followers, this is like the most credible source on this app right now. All right, guys, I'm gonna head out. Have a good one.
Night.
You know, we don't know how many are in there. We know there's people left. Today, in our situation report, we have basically said the siege is over. We've called the siege over, as just about everybody else at this point. We know that there are still people left that didn't surrender. Opinion. I don't have the facts, and I always separate. You know, this is an assessment or this is an opinion. I always make this clear. This is opinion. It's not an assessment. The group that has stayed behind, there was already an insurgency that has started in Mariupol. They're staying behind to run that insurgency. That's my strict opinion. This is their new thing. They're going to run insurgency and raise hell. We'll talk a little bit more about what's going on in Mariupol, because there is some interesting stuff that's happened there in the last 24 hours that pushes on from Azovstal. So if we head south, we move to Hordlavinka and Donetsk. There has been like trading of real estate there. Once you get past the city of Donetsk and you keep heading west, this is classic World War I warfare, all the way to Kherson. That whole line through Zaporozhye. I'm going to say it wrong because I just learned to say it right and my brain wants to go back to the wrong. I know it's not Mykolaiv, but I'm going to say Mykolaiv and I'm sorry. And then through Kherson Oblast. All of these areas here, that's World War I. At Hordlavinka and Donetsk, there's some trading of real estate going on. So Russia's taken we took this village, but they kind of didn't because they get pushed out like a day later. And then Ukraine, like for instance, yesterday, Ukraine was, we're in Vasily. And I was like, you're in Vasily? That's like the bombed out airport at Donetsk City. You're just one town. Yeah, they were there for 12 hours and they got pushed out. That's what a lot is going on there. You really Russian forces have claimed that they've captured New York. There is a New York, Ukraine, by the way, legit. Russian forces have claimed that they have captured New York 100 times. And what this is, they get into New York, they're in there 12 hours, they get pushed out, they push the Ukrainians out. This is just World War I warfare, back and forth. It's artillery driven, jump over the trenches, rah, go back, they jump over the trenches, rah, send in a few tanks get blown up, infantry fighting vehicles we'll send in ours. That's what's going on there. In Donetsk, the city, they're having problems with water, they're having problems with electricity. The shelling, some of the artillery shells, MLRS, is starting to land in some of the outskirts of the city, and they're having protests. Now, the leadership of the Donetsk People Republic are calling them riots. They're not riots. They're protests. People are extremely unhappy because they feel these are the things that are making them unhappy. Number one, there's been a ton of forced conscription. And they are starting to do forced conscription with women because there's no men left that aren't under 18 or over 60 or aren't disabled or already wounded or in a civilian role that is so critical that they can't yank them out and say, you're going to go be a soldier now. So they're starting to do forced conscription of women. And the other thing that's going on is what Russia's promised is if your loved one gets a code 200 discharge, we're going to write you a check. Sorry, here you go. You get your check for your code. They're not paying up to these Ukrainian militia fighters, to their families. You get a code 300 discharge, we're going to take care of it. Yeah, they're not doing that either. And what's happened up in Kharkiv, which is what's caused these protests. And as we go around, we'll finish with Kharkiv. As we go around, there are DNR and LNR troops. Most of them are Luhansk, but there are some DNR, Donetsk People Republic, and they are trapped. They are encircled. They're truly encircled, but they're not encircled because of Ukraine. They're encircled because of Russia and Ukraine. They've got the Ukrainians to their south and the Russian border to their north. And the Russians have retreated over the border, and they're like, no, you don't get to retreat with us. You stay there in Ukraine. And we're like, wait, but if we stay here, they're gonna code 200 discharge all of us. Yeah, that's kind of was the whole idea. Because like we don't actually want to get the code 200 discharge. That's on you, bro. And so, because they got phones and they're calling their family back in Donetsk going, they're not letting us into Russia. They're not letting us to come home. And this is why they're having, again, their leadership's calling them riots. They're not riots, but this is why they're having these spontaneous protests. People are kind of over it. They're starting to see in Donetsk, the city, Luhansk, the city, they're starting to see they've been sold a bill of goods, that they've been lied to. And they're starting to see it for what it is. And that's, as we get south, we'll get into Mariupol. That's why I said there's been some interesting stuff. If we continue west into the Zaporizhzhia, and I am not going to try to say the two towns without my translator app that I can practice with. I'm not going to say it, but over by the Dnipro River, there's one town that starts with an O, or I'm not going to say it. Starts with an O. It's getting shelled every friggin' day. It doesn't look like Russia's interested in trying to capture either of these two. They're town size. They're not city size. It doesn't look like Russia's interested in capturing either of these two towns at this point. They've actually blown up the roads from the south on the Russian side of the line to get to a couple of these towns now. They're destroying the roads and the bridges because they're just digging in. They're building concrete. They're not just building trenches. They're building like concrete bunkers now. So they have settled in to literally World War I trench warfare. What I've been jokingly saying is they're building the Maginot Line out in Kherson. I love that. Thank you so much. I love the effects. They're essentially building a Maginot Line on the western border of Kherson and up. And I know I'm going to say this one, and I really have worked to say it right, and it's just my brain is going to the wrong pronunciation. Mykolaiv. And I know that's not right. And they're building fortifications there. Yes, now that's not true. They're shooting artillery. Yes, they are harassing. They are shooting artillery and missile over the line, just as Ukraine is shooting at them from the other side. They do little incursions into the village. These are not big offensive. This is not trying to get real estate. This is just trying to lock forces in place. That's all this is. It's a stalemate there. Now, let's talk about Mariupol, something that's going on there. So the Donetsk People Republic and their leadership, because Mariupol is in Donetsk, it is in the Donetsk Oblast, and they were like, we get to run this city. And they thought this was going to be a big economic win because that's what Mariupol was, this huge engine of economic generation through steel and industrial works, and all of that is destroyed. Russia's the Ilyich plant. Russia's trying to get people to come back to work there, and they're like, my toilet doesn't flush. I don't have electricity. You can't feed me. There's no running water. And the garbage is piled up in the street. And my neighbors who died 4 weeks ago are still laying in the road. I'm not really interested in going and making steel right now. Okay. You got to solve some other stuff here first. So, and I talked about this a little earlier. Like they're saying, we're going to tear down the plant. The Azovstal plant is too badly damaged. We're going to tear it down and we're going to put a technological park there. Who? Like what? You think Intel's going to, I mean, China's going to come. Huawei has left Russia, basically. Huawei is honoring the contracts that people have signed, but they're not signing new contracts. Lenovo is left. Like who? What technology park? What are you talking about? And they're going to turn it into a resort city. It just sounds like a wonderful resort. So what? You're going to tear down 60% of the destroyed buildings, let it grow into grass, and you're going to make a clean version of Detroit. Sorry, Detroit. And by the way, if you're from Detroit, I love Detroit, and Detroit does not get the rap that it deserves. Detroit's renaissance, Detroit hit its bottom, I feel like around 2011, and it has been in renaissance and rebirth ever since. And Detroit is a much more beautiful and a much better city than where it was a decade ago. And I was there when it was at the basement, and I was traveling there on business. And I got to see as this renaissance was starting, and I could see it firsthand on the stuff that was going on there. But I mean, it's like, yeah, so we're going to make this a resort city. So what? You're going to tear down the buildings and let the grass grow in and call it a park? Is this your plan? Now, Donetsk People Republic thought they were going to run the show there. They're not running the show there. The Russian FSB I love the dog. Whoa, I never seen the dog. Thank you. The Russian FSB is running the show there, and they've installed their own leaders. And so the Donetsk People Republic leaders are fighting with the people that the Russian FSB put in there, and the Donetsk People Republic is getting pushed out. On top of that, Russia and the FSB have said, yeah, and we're going to let the Chechens run the show here because we owe them something. And the Donetsk People Republic are, wait a minute, what? And so what have they done? They've pulled their police forces. So they have territorial guard. I mean, they call them police. They're not police, what you think here in Canada. Well, I don't know. Some of them are. These are really heavily militarized police. They're yanking the police out of there. The Donetsk people, and they're doing it on the argument of, we've got riots in Donetsk and Luhansk because they're unhappy with your decisions in this war, and we have to suppress the riots that are going. But they're not riots; they're just protests, and they're protests. These are not riots. But it gave them the excuse. So what do you think that's going to do to the security situation? Because Russia's yanked their troops out. There's only 2,000 troops in there. Now the local police are getting yanked out of there, and you have an unknown number of Ukrainian Marines, Azov Battalion, Territorial Guard, Ukrainian police, who have had 80 days of war, and they are mad as hell. Yeah, exactly. Whoever did the fireworks, the insurgency that is going to be starting in Mariupol in the next 30 days, it's going to be bad. This is not going to be good there. And we're seeing like in Melitopol, right, with the train and the Code 200 discharges of city officials that are going on, and people have aligned. There's Kherson. We're seeing the same thing. People that have aligned themselves with Russia are disappearing. They're being found in a very bad state with a Code 200 discharge. There's already insurgencies in this area. Mariupol is going to be so much worse. And the reason it's going to be worse is that city is rubble, and there are so many places to hide. And if you think about these fighters that have been there, especially anybody who is Azov Battalion, right? They've been in the city for 8 years. They know every sewer, every nook, every cranny, every alley. They know everything. and they're going to know how to move around, where to steal supplies, and there's going to be sympathizers in that city. There's going to be people who are going to make sure they're fed. There's going to be people who make sure they got information. And yes, there'll be repressions, and the FSB is going to make people, but the tighter they squeeze, the more people are going to fall through their fingers, because that's what happens with an oppressive regime. So that's a mess. I already kind of talked about Kherson, and I know I'm going to say it wrong again, Mykolaiv. There's not much, like, people keep asking, what's going on with Kherson? I've said this since late March. I don't think the Ukrainian general staff has any interest in trying to move into Kherson. And the reason is that area is, if we talk about United States, we opened this up talking about Kansas. This is Kansas. This is Nebraska out there. This is flat, open area. It is very hard to defend Kherson. Really hard. So Ukraine keeping 5 battalion tactical groups locked down in Kherson, because Russia's so worried that they're going to come in and try to invade and take that city back, that's already a win. Because that's what they're doing there. Kherson will probably be one of the last places liberated, in my opinion, because it is so hard to defend. And you're like, but that means it's hard to defend for the Russians. Yes, exactly. So they could go in and throw the Russians out, and then they'll have the same problems that the Russians have. And then they're going to have to lock in 2 brigades, because brigades are about 4 battalion tactical groups. There's nothing, it's just how Russia counts units and how Ukraine counts units. They're going to have to lock down 2 brigades into Kherson, and they don't want to do that. They could put a brigade on the other side from Kherson to Mykolaiv and lock down 7 battalion tactical groups, because there's about 2 more up by Mykolaiv. And that's what they're doing. So that's the W. Odessa, what's going on down there? Russia's reestablished on Snake Island. They've got a garrison, about 3 dozen is the estimate. They've set up 2 anti-aircraft systems back up there. And there's more ships now that are coming in because they have that air cover again. Anyway, they're firing a lot more missiles into the Odessa area, and a lot of them are just hitting civilian infrastructure. They hit the Zatoka Bridge for the 5th time. It's funny because when the bridge got hit the first time, that's a terrible bridge, terribly engineered, just going to fall in the water. It's damaged, but it's still standing. It's been hit with 5 missiles. Anyway, that's going on there. Now we're going to go back up to the other side, right? So we'll start with Kyiv. Really nothing going on there. Chernihiv in the Oblast. There is a lot of artillery shell, mortar fire right along the border. Up there. There is a lot of harassment. What Russia's not going to do a big invasion. They don't have any troops there to do it. This is trying to lock Ukrainian forces into place. Just I forgot, Transnistria, nothing's happening there. What's happened in Transnistria? Yeah, there was a lot of kind of all this false flaggy stuff. Did they? Don't they? Yes, we're going on to a war footing, and Russian troops have gone into a war footing. And what it looks like what happened is the Transnistrian breakaway public government was kind of told it's go time, and they did a Belarus. Really? Yeah. Good luck storming the castle, boys. We're not going to help you out with this one, actually. And the Transnistrian Defense Force, I have a hard time calling it an army because they're a breakaway republic. So the Transnistria Defense Force, they stood down. They're like, that's it. We're going home. Good luck. Russian military units that are there, about 1,500 at the most, they're still on their war activation footing. What are they going to do with 1,500? They can't. They're not. And what's going to happen to those 1,500 leave? Moldova is going to tell Transnistria, hey, they left. If those 1,500 Russian soldiers leave, that's it. We're going to invade on the Odessa side. Here we go. Rah! And they leave. Moldova's going to apply for NATO like that. And they're going to apply for the EU like that. The reason they can't right now is because by NATO and EU rules, they are considered an occupied country because those 1,500 Russian soldiers are in Transnistria. They're not going anywhere. And the next thing they're going to tell Transnistria is, this whole holding on to like, no, the Soviet, like seriously, this like, it's still 1978 in Transnistria. They have refused to recognize that the Soviet Union collapsed. That's Transnistria's raison d'être. Not even Russia recognizes them as a country. It's a really weird little situation there. And we did a TikTok where we explained all of that history and how it became the mess that it is. And it took like 100 years of mess to get us where we're at. But if those Russians left, Moldova's going, hi, we'd like to join NATO. Thank you very much. We're not occupied anymore. That's number one. And number two, they're going to tell Transnistria, yeah, you know what? Grow up. It's over. Okay. It's over. You and what army? Well, we applied for NATO. Oh, NATO. Ooh, they're scary evil. Whatever. All right, we were talking about Kyiv. Let's go back to Chernihiv. What's going on there? A lot of harassment on the border. I do want to talk about Desna. I don't know if I'm saying that one right. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry. We put this in our situation report. By the way, I'll call it out again. If you go to our profile, you can become a patron, $5 a month. You get our daily situation reports. We didn't do 2 this week. There was one we flat out didn't do one, and we did a mini one today because I had Jewish stuff to do today. Like seriously, I had Jewish stuff to do today. I do a Jewish barbecue. There was no pulled pork at the Jewish barbecue. There was some amazing kosher hot dogs at the Jewish barbecue. But $5 a month. You get the daily situation reports. They're 25 to 40 pages, maps, pictures, and all of the receipts. So in other words, if we make a claim, there's a footnote and link, and then you can go to the link on the claim. And we use stuff from Russia, and we use stuff from Ukraine, and we use stuff from all around the world. And sometimes we put stuff right, and anything that comes from Russia, particularly state media, we put a rating on that link. We rate it, it's valid, questionable, misinformation, or disinformation. Valid, I think, makes sense. Questionable, I think, makes sense. What's the difference between misinformation and disinformation? Misinformation is there's stuff in here that's factual, but there's some things in here that are being exaggerated to the point or minimized to the point. That's not. And disinformation is like just no. And generally, if we include something in Russian state media where we go, this is disinformation. Like, I'll give you an example. April 12th. The Chechens put out, they love their TikTok. You notice they don't make as many TikTok videos lately? It's because they're on the front lines fighting now. They're not in the rear with the gear anymore. April 12th, Chechen TikTok video. We've taken Rubizhne. Check out our video. And okay, we looked at their video and we were able to geolocate where they were, and they actually weren't even in Rubizhne. But that video, we included it in our situation report because that video did show where they were. We were able to geolocate exactly where they were. And where they were was important because that provided us with tactical information on, well, they're right here. Just using, they weren't like literally right there, but you get the point. So we include like, hey, we know that Chechen forces have dug in at this point. Google mapped it right to the latitude and longitude. You click to the Google map and you go there. And here is the video that they released that shows that they are there. And if you go to this point in the video, you will see on Google Map that you look here and you go, yeah, that's exactly where they were. And they're not in Rubizhne. So that means they weren't there. So we included that piece of Russian state, well, TikTok, Chechen TikTok. We included it, but there's a little comment that says Russian state media rating, disinformation. Because what's the claim? We've captured Rubizhne on April 12th. Remember, I'm talking about April 12th, which isn't true. Disinformation, right? That's not misinformation. They're not misspeaking. They are intentionally misspeaking. That's disinformation. Anyway, that's what's in those reports. Let's talk about Kharkiv. If there's bad news in Popasna, if this is the bad news place for Ukraine, Kharkiv is the bad news place for Russia. I talked earlier about how there are troops that are bottled up, and they're not in a salient, they're surrounded. If you look at the map, by the way, salient is a fancy military word for a bulge. Right? So if you think of a map and you see a bulge, that's a salient. And so there are two salients now on north of Kharkiv. And those are DNR and LNR troops in those areas. They're not Russian troops. There's one town where there are Russian troops. And there's a little bit of, I think I'm going to say it wrong. And I need to pull it up on the map because the town's important. The town's important. So hold, please. Because the town, will you load? What the heck? Why are you not loading? Hold, please. There we go. I don't know why the map wasn't loading. But why? Because I'm doing a live and I need it to load like right now. There is a town and there was some weird information that came out about this town today. And because we didn't do a sit rep today, we didn't investigate it, but we are going to investigate it tomorrow.
Kozacha Lopan.
Kozacha Lopan. Kozacha Lopan. Russian forces are in Kozacha Lopan. That's, we think. Because here's the weird thing. There was a report this afternoon that said that Russian forces were fighting to get back into
Kozacha Lopan.
Kozacha Lopan. That Russian forces were fighting to get back into Kozacha Lopan. And we were like, what? They're in Kozacha Lopan. When did they get pushed out? Because we never heard anything that they got pushed out. So this was very weird because that's the stronghold. If you look at the areas where they had the most troop concentration, that's it. And if they're struggling, if they're even struggling to hold Kozacha Lopan, then the situation north of Kharkiv for the Russians is actually worse than what we thought. The reason that these other troops from the DNR and LNR are surrounded, Russia's not letting them cross into the border, right? If you look at North Kharkiv, what do you mean they're surrounded? You just go north in Russia. We're in Russia. You can't do anything about it now. Now we're going to fire artillery at you from Russia. You just have to take it. They're not letting the Ukrainian militants into the border. Not only are they not letting them cross, they're like, and if you try to cross, we're going to give you a permanent code 200 discharge. So you just need to stay there. And you're like telling us to fight until we get a code 2. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what we are doing. You're just supposed to fight here. And good luck. So they're surrounded. And the problem that they have is, if you look at the map, like if you look at it, like, no, wait a minute, there's not two salients, but there is, because there is a reservoir that divides these two areas. And Ukraine has moved up to the southern tip of that reservoir. And that's where they control now. So they've been cut into two groups. And you have Kozacha Lopan. I'm getting better at this. Where you have a big troop concentration there. And then Vasily. That's the other place where there is a big troop concentration, which is more to the east. These troops are going to get destroyed or they're going to have to surrender. That's what's going to happen to these DNR and LNR troops. And I'm going to be, because I talk about the good and I talk about the bad. And if you remember, and I know some people aren't going to like this, but we're not in the tank for anybody here. We're in the tank for the truth. If you remember, back in March, late March, there was this terrible video. 3 Russian POWs. I can't get into details. All I can say is, and I'm not saying to candy coat it, they were viciously maltreated. That's the most I could say without upsetting the TikTok gods. They were viciously maltreated. It was on video, and I know it's fake. No, it's not. We went through and looked at it, and we did a TikTok, and we're very concerned. This looks pretty authentic. This is why we think it's authentic. BBC came out about a week later. They did a ton of geolocation work, and they geolocated everything right down. And then they had the dates and the time based on weather and light. And then we were able to
And not only
we feel that this was very authentic what happened. The 3 soldiers that were involved, they were captured because they were operating a thermobaric, the TOS-1, the flamethrower missile system. So we know down to the piece of equipment with really high confidence. This was revenge. And it's not right. But what about, I get it. I am not into false moral equivalency here. It's war. It's terrible. And crappy things happen in war. And we're pretty sure that that was the Kraken group. We were pretty sure that this was not regular Ukraine because the BBC investigation identified that the Kraken group had captured about 30 soldiers. And there was a video of this capture. But now, full stop. In that video, those soldiers were not maltreated. The other thing is, in that video with the 30 soldiers, you don't see these other 3 soldiers. They don't appear to be in that group, but that's not definitive. But there were 30 soldiers captured by the Kraken group. They were harassed, they were harangued, but basically they were harangued by everybody singing the Ukrainian national anthem around them. That's what it is. That's not terrible. There are far worse things they could do. But we're pretty sure that it was the Kraken group, and I know that's a strong accusation, that was involved in this incident with March. Kraken group is doing a lot of the offense up here, and straight up, I'm kind of concerned what's going to happen to some of these DNR and LNR guys, because they very well could be labeled as, you're not a soldier, you're Ukrainian, you're a criminal, you do not have the protections of a soldier. And other nations have played this game. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm telling you it is a concern that I have, because war sucks, war is hell, and terrible things happen in war. And if people are like, my side's 100% the good guys, and they don't do anything wrong ever, 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 you're delusional. And that's for any belligerent in any war. Russia is doing awful, horrible thing, and at a scale infinitely worse than anything that Ukraine has done. It's unimaginable, some of the stuff that is going on. You don't know. Oh, believe me. I've had to see stuff and geolocate stuff and validate stuff. It's the stuff of nightmares. I've seen stuff that nobody should have to friggin' see. And not just kind of watch it for my entertainment, but then you'll have to watch it over and over and analyze it with other analysts, where we're trying to figure out, where did this exactly happen? And everyone's fried. Not just our team. You read on Telegram, OST, Spook. If you follow any of this stuff, Spook does amazing work. He just put a thing up tonight. I'm taking a break for a week. I'm done. I'm cooked. We're all cooked. All of us are cooked from the trauma we're seeing. But Ukraine is not in this either. They've done some bad things because it's war, and war is hell. And I beat that into the ground. They're not going to be able to hold this North Kharkiv area. If I were these DNR and LNR guys, we surrender. I'd want to surrender, and I would want to surrender to Ukrainian troops. I would not want to surrender to Kraken Group if it were them. Everything of what I know, what we know, what we're pretty sure what happened in March, I would just be, that's it? You're not going to let us cross the border? Fine. How do we surrender? Hi, how you doing? We effed up. We're getting screwed by the Russians. And how do we surrender? Because we just want to surrender. We're done. That's what I would do. Okay, the other area where Russia's got a problem, this is the bigger problem. Over at Stary Salpiv, I hope I said that right. I didn't put it in my universal translator thing. And at Zavidi, Ukraine has established a bridgehead on the other side. Now that bridge is damaged. We don't know how Ukraine got to the eastern side of the Seversky Donets River, but they got to the eastern side of the Seversky Donets River, and they've established a bridgehead there. Now, that doesn't mean they have the bridge. That means they've got the west side of the bridge controlled, and now they have the east side of the bridge controlled. That's the proper way to do a wet crossing. You don't throw a bunch of bodies across a river like Russia did at Bilohorivka and try to get everybody to zerg rush across a couple of pontoon bridges and hope it goes well while it's raining M777 A2 155 millimeter rounds, like a hailstorm through there. This is not how you do a bridge crossing. This is how you get an entire brigade strength, not a brigade in numbers, brigade strength. This is how you get an entire brigade strength destroyed, which is what they successfully did there. And this is why, understand, right? Bilohorivka was supposed to be the northern pincer, and Popasna was supposed to be the southern, and they were supposed to come together. So Russia's lost the pincer, and they lost essentially 4 battalion tactical groups in the process. That's why at Popasna, I'm not super convinced that even if they throw these 4 BTG, because think about it, 4, 8. Well, now that makes sense. It's 8,000 people. Now they're going to try to do it with 4 to 5,000. It's not good. It's going to be really tough for Ukraine. It's going to be a tough 2 to 5 days there. So they're over on the other side, and they're entrenched, right? This group's not going anywhere. They've moved enough people and equipment to be able to hold 2 settlements on the east side of the river. Why is that a big deal? That river was a natural boundary, and it really wasn't expected that Ukraine would be able to bridge over. Someone on the Russian side really screwed up here. They really screwed up. They should have never let this happen. They should have had the forces in place to prevent this from happening. And we sincerely do not know how they got over there. We have a theory. We have that on our Twitter. There's a whole thread that we did, and we have satellite photos and analysts, and you actually get to see the sausage. We've done a couple of Twitter threads where you get to see the sausage making, how we reach our conclusions, how we do our research, how we kind of pull stuff down, where all of a sudden you read I know people have watched our channel for a while or read our sit rep reports, right? We put stuff up there and you'll see that's not true. I haven't seen that anywhere. I haven't seen that on any Twitter channel or Telegram or the mainstream room. You're lying. And then like 36 hours later, it's all over the news. And then people, how the hell did you know that? It's like, the information was there. And yes, we talked to people. We talked to people in Ukraine. We talk to analysts in Israel. We talk to analysts in Georgia. We work with people in the United Kingdom. We have a big network of people that we talk to. That's why every now and then I'll say, and this is as far as I'm going, we're going to respect OPSEC. We know something else. The river situation is an example of that. We knew something was going on there. We had some little extra information there. And I'm not still not for OPSEC, operational security. I'm not going to get into what we know. Because one of the things is, it's amazing what happens when you work with the truth and you tell the truth even when it's painful. And when you respect privacy and security of people sharing information with you, you get a lot more information. And you get a lot more information that you can trust so that you can draw stronger conclusions. Because sometimes we may get the information, and what we will do to form our opinions out of operational security will be, we will do our research to work our way to the information that we know. So even though we know the answer, we're not going to come out and say we know the answer, because then we've essentially burned a contact. But what we may do is, this is what's happened and this is why we think this has happened. We're going to lay it out. Moskva is a great example of this. We had a person telling us what was going on with the Moskva. We got up on here and we said, Moskva was hit 90 minutes. It lasted 90 minutes. She rolled over on her side and she sunk. The end. And we were spot on. That isn't because we had secret satellites or whatever. It's because somebody trusted us with the information. And when they got the information, can we go? It's like, yeah, the ship sunk. Just tell them. And it was somebody we trusted, and they were 100% right. And they're not 100% right all the time. There was something recently, and I can't remember what it was. We had to walk it back. We went with somebody who we trusted. They gave us, and yeah, you can run with this. There's no OPSEC here. You can run with it. And it wasn't right. And we had to come up, and it was like, yeah, we did trust. We didn't do trust but verify. We put very few people in that bucket. It's a lesson for us. Trust but verify. You got to trust but verify everything. I will say we do know a little bit more of what's going on east of the river, and that's all I can say. But yeah, they're over there. They have a bridgehead. They do not have like massive forces over there. It's not like they're just all of a sudden going to start storming across that eastern area over there. The problem, understand this, Ukraine doesn't have to go all the way, to the Russian border to cut off these supply lines. All they have to do is push about 10 kilometers off the reservoir. 10 kilometers east. That's all they've got to do. Because if they push 10 kilometers east, they can move in the NATO M777A2 artillery. And those artillery pieces will be able to hit those supply lines from the west side of the river, but will be out of range of Russian artillery because the M777A2 has a much longer range and much greater accuracy. And the Ukrainian artillery, they're far more disciplined than what they have. The other advantage that Ukraine has is they use proximity fuses, where Russia's using contact fuses. Well, what the hell is that? Once upon a time, we developed artillery shells. And artillery shells would hit the ground and go boom when they hit the ground. And even before cannonball, they had, even back before, Erwin Beck do cannonballs, they would have munitions that were meant to explode in the air. Because one of the things that they discovered is that when they explode in the air and all that shrapnel goes, boom, it hits a lot more people and it does a lot more damage. This is why there was a video this weekend. I don't know if you saw this, about 3.5 minutes. A couple of guys in a trench, firefights going on. The guy is like cell phone recording the firefight. By the way, I would be that guy. I'm that, and people that know me know me. I would be that guy. I would be that in the head. Oh yeah, we're gonna get this on video. I hope it's not my code 200 discharge, but we're going to get this. It's going to be epic. Let me set up the phone. Give me a minute here. I'm going to get back in the firefight. Let me find a place. Right? Shell lands like right in front, knocks the camera over, dirt everywhere. That was a ground burst shell. And the reason that that's important is a ground burst shell has to about land on you to give you the code 200 discharge. If it lands close, it's going to give you a concussion and a bad headache. And you get a few of those, you're going to have problems later in life. If that had been a proximity fuse that was set to explode 20 feet in the air, we would have never seen that video because it just would have been, and they'd have been wiped out. The phone had been destroyed. And Russia is not using proximity fuses because apparently they don't have a lot of shells with proximity fuse. There's some people saying they're just trying to use up their old Cold War stockpile. Who knows? All these M777A2 NATO shells, the 150,000 shells they got, they're all proximity fuse. All of them. And this is like, there was a video that came out where both Russia and Ukraine were claiming it was their video. This was a couple of days ago. This is a good example of like misinformation. Showing trenches getting hit near, I think, Horlivinka. And Russia's saying, this is us attacking Ukrainians. And Ukraine was saying, this is us attacking Russians. So how did we figure out what the truth was? The second shell, if you go back, if you know the video I'm talking about, you go back and look. The second shell is proximity fuse, and it explodes in this classic, when a proximity fuse goes, it's a horseshoe shape. It's a U shape, the pattern of that comes out. And it was the classic proximity fuse, and you could just see on the ground the horseshoe shape. And it's like, yeah, that's NATO M777A2 155 millimeter. That's Ukraine dropping that on Russia. That's how we knew in that video, and that ultimately has been attributed to, because we're not the only ones who saw this. So Russia's using ground fuse, hits the ground, boom. So they're pounding ground, which this isn't as good as proximity fuses. This is why if you're in an open trench and they're pounding ground with World War I grade munitions, they're using munitions for World War I, being designed for World War I. This is why you're pretty safe in a trench. If you're using stuff that has the proximity fuses, you need to be in a bunker, because if it goes off over your head, the trench isn't going to do anything for you. So, right, Russia's got some equipment problems over there. All right, I beat on that to death. Let's keep going down. We're going to do a zoom, and I left out Sumy here. Sumy is the same thing as Chernihiv. There's not going to be some big invasion here. These are harassment raids that they're pushing over the border, the artillery fire that they're doing into those villages across there. This is just harassment. They're trying to lock down Ukrainian forces there. That's all they're trying to do. There's not going to be some big, they don't have it. They don't have the troops to do anything in that space. And one of the worst mistakes they could do right now is commit the troops there, because then that means that's troops committed in Sumy that have no strategic or tactical value that really should be in Donetsk. So as far as I'm concerned, Chernihiv, so please send 4 or 5 battalion tactical groups in through there. Please. That would just be amazing if you would do that. It would be amazingly bad on the Russian part. Izum. There's something going on, right? I go back to the sausage making. We did this big, long thread on Twitter where we outline our case that Ukrainian forces across the Seversky, if you're like here, you're like, the Seversky Donets River is written. Yeah, when the history books are written on this, the Seversky Donets River is everything in this war right now in the eastern part of the country. Ukrainian forces are definitely on the east side of the Seversky Donets River, northwest of Izum. Definitely. There was another, I'm going to have to look this town up because this is another really important town. This was another, like, wait a minute, but I thought everyone's been saying the guy who makes our maps from the Rondelli Foundation has it this way, and now all of a sudden you're telling us, and wait a minute, when did the plot change? So bear with me. I have to find this. I have to find this town on the map. Oh my God, why can't I? Oh, well, it would help if I was looking in the right place on the map. Hold, please, while I look for this town on the map. Ah, here we go. Oh, gee, I'm never going to be able to say this. Put it in my handy-dandy universal translator.
Велика Комишуваха.
Yeah, I hope you all heard that. I'm not trying.
Велика Комишуваха. Велика Комишуваха.
Yes, Veluka Komoshalaka. Oh, a little anti-Semitism on Mike Live. Bye-bye. Yeah, we don't tolerate anti-Semitism on our lives here. On a Zoom, I'll play the town one more time.
Велика Комишуваха.
There we go. Whatever that town is. There was a report that came out today that Russian forces tried to capture
Велика Комишуваха.
and they were unsuccessful. You're like, okay, so what? Why? Every map had Russia already in.
Велика Комишуваха.
So this is another one where we're like, whoa, wait a minute. What? They're trying to capture, they were there. Not only were they there, like there's receipts, right? This is not a situation of like, this is a town that's been flipping back and forth for 24 hours. This is, they're there. We saw the video. We geolocated it. We saw more than one video. We geolocated multiple pictures. They're there. When did they leave? What? This is what I mean. There's something going on in that western flank of the Izum front, and Ukrainian General Staff, Russian Ministry of Defense, they're not talking about it. But it's not good for Russia, what's going on over there. They're losing territory. We declared 4 settlements northwest of Izum that we had in Russia. We declared them a few days ago. It was like, they're liberated. They're tiny. These are, again, this is not strategic. This is tactical. These are probably villages that had less than 100 people living with them in this forested area northwest of Izum. But there's a large area there that is clearly Ukraine is in control. The other thing that's starting to happen is Ukrainian artillery fire, where they're targeting Russian forces, is creeping closer and closer and closer to the city of Izum itself. They're now hitting targets within 6 kilometers of the city of Izum. One of the pro-Russian people that makes maps that they're pretty good. I'm not dismissing the maps that they're making. They do a pretty heavy job of overstating the territorial gains that Russia has, and this individual has had to walk things back. But we do use them for intelligence because they're not 100% out in left field. There are things they put it, they're a good source for us. What we'll look at is they'll make a claim, this has been captured solidly in Russian control. And what they're good for is for us to go and dig and go, oh yeah, there was a battle in that town. Russia didn't end up capturing that town, but there was a battle in the town. And that lets us know where Russian troops are operating. So it does inform us. a couple of days ago on his map, he all of a sudden, because this was a person that was saying there are 1,000 Ukrainian troops, they are surrounded in Oskil, Russia's going to capture these troops, it's going to be a big disaster. And then on his map, he all of a sudden he showed Oskil captured. And then people were like, so what happened? Meaning, when I say people, I mean the Russian supporters. This is, we don't harass people. That's not our MO. The Russian supporters are like, so what happened to those 1,000 Ukrainians? And like, he wouldn't answer the question. And we're looking at this going, when did they capture Oskil? What? A couple of days ago, he quietly moved the line back to show that Oskil is not captured by the Russians. Oskil has been contested this whole time. Nobody control. It's no man's land. This is back and forth in a contested area. There weren't 1,000 Ukrainians ever surrounded there either. And then he walked it back a little bit. It's like, well, there's a few hundred and they're over by the dam and they're surrounded. They were never surrounded. They never controlled Oskil. And he walked that map back. And same thing, tons of questions from the Russian support. Wait a minute. When did we lose Oskil? And he wouldn't answer the questions. And the answer is, it just never happened in the first place. So if you go look at a map of Izum and you kind of look 6 kilometers to the north, because that's where Ukraine is dropping artillery shells all day long now. And remember, if they're dropping NATO M777A2 there, which has a range of, if they put in 3 charges, that's going to go 28 kilometers. In theory, they can go to 40 kilometers, but my understanding is they don't have all the equipment. My understanding is they got Excalibur shells, but the systems that have the required computers to use the Excalibur shells aren't there yet. So I'm a little, why did we send them the Excalibur shells then? Because they're really expensive. If they can't use them, that doesn't matter. $68,000 each. So why did we send them the shells if they can't use them yet? Regular shells go about 28 kilometers. If they've set up a fire base within, a fire base is a term for an artillery position. If they've set up a fire base within 28 kilometers of Izum, this is not going to be in an area that could be overrun like that, because they don't want to lose these pieces. The other thing is, this isn't going to be in an area with a questionable supply line. They got to keep bringing in those charges and the shells, right? Steady supply's got to keep coming into this fire base. So wherever they are, west, we know they're west. And we know that the furthest south they can be is 28 kilometers. And we know that around that area, they are very confident that they're not going to be overrun. That doesn't mean an airstrike can't come in. That doesn't mean that it can't get hit with MLRS. But wherever they're at, wherever they're firing, they're very confident in their territorial control. They're not putting that, you don't put towed artillery in places where you think you're going to get run over in a few hours. And you're not putting towed artillery in a place where you're only going to set up for an hour or two, fire, and then go somewhere else, because it doesn't work that way. So there's something going on. And there is a slow motion offensive that is going on that west side. I talked much earlier in this. I think we've kind of gone around. Well, actually, we have just one more section. We have just one more section to go over, then we've gone around the whole battle lines. I talked earlier about they had 3 battalion tactical groups defending that western flank. If you get our situation reports, we've been saying since the middle of April, right? This is an exposed western flank. They don't have enough troops over here. This is just opening up for interdiction. We're not letting you do this. I know it's a fancy word, military word. It's opening this thing up for interdiction and harassment. What a shock. They're getting interdiction harassed. They've moved 2 more battalion tactical groups over, but they don't have 5. They basically have 3, because one of the groups that has been put, if this group, this Russian military unit, deserves everything that has happened to them since they left Bucha. Everything. And it certainly looks like the Russian Ministry of Defense, despite the fact they pinned a bunch of medals on their chest and gave them the title of guards, the Russian Ministry of Defense is making their problem go away with a lot of Code 200 discharges. These guys, what's left of the 64th, because I was talking earlier about horrific pictures and having to geolocate and look at stuff. Yeah, there is a horrific video of a bunch of the guys from that 64th unit, extremely graphic. And Code 200 discharges all of them, and it's a lot of them. Guess where they are? They're west of the zoo. They're the ones right on the line with this, and there's not a lot left. The other one, the 76th, they were in Irpin. So Russia's making these two problems go away with the 76th and the 64th, and they're just north of the 64th on the west side of the zoo. So you know why they're there. They've brought in 3 other, and that's why I say these units, they're probably company size at this point. Those 2 combined probably don't make up a battalion tactical group at this point. They have maybe 3.5 on that side, trying to shore things up. There are some areas also that were south of Izum that Russia's starting to lose control of. There were areas, and this is why we're not counting. Like this south line of Izum, we stopped going. They captured this town. Because it's changing 2-3 times a day. It was a fool's errand. I would get up on here and go, guess what? They captured Davidi. Oh, guess what? They lost it again. Oh, this just in. We got another video. They captured it again. That's literally what's going on there. But the line's going the other way, right? Remember I've been saying like this is back and forth. And if we look at Severodonetsk, and the line's going back and forth, but Russia is gaining by meters slowly. South of Izum is the direct opposite. It's going back and forth. Ukraine is gaining the meters. They're going this way. That's the difference. Last thing, Lyman, right? A lot of talk about Lyman there. Pro-Russian accounts, Lyman's surrounded all sides. They're in a kettle. We got them. Yeah, no. You look at any map, like you can even look at the Russian maps, and you're just like, where are you getting surrounded? Like there's no one to the south, and there's no one to the west. Are we defining surrounded differently? Because like surrounded is surrounded. Well, there's a river there. Yeah. And they live there, so they know how to cross. They know the spots. They know and you don't. You don't think that they figured this part out? You don't think they're getting any supplies in there as it is? Like, if they weren't getting any supplies, how come they're still shooting back? You just fake. They're not surrounded. It's not good. Don't get me wrong. This is Popasna, Severodonetsk, not good. They're getting pushed from the north. They're not as much getting pushed from the east. Yampil is this other one, right? Russians were back, I think April 25th. We've captured Yampil. And like, we're watching the video, and then there's like literally a video on the same day of a bunch of Ukrainians in Yampil. And I'm like, and almost in the same area in the same day. And I'm like, what the hell just happened here? What? And then we're trying to figure out, were these videos shot in different days? And no, they were shot on the same day. It's just like some Russians came in, shot a video for 5 minutes when nobody was there. Yay! And then they left. And then the Ukrainians basically did the same thing. They basically came in, shot a video. See, we control Yampil, and left. And that's what's been going on with Yampil. And this is another one. Yampil, like we put it, like we kind of gave up because everyone's like, no, it's captured. And we're like, we're not seeing anything that it's contested. It's absolutely contested. They're fighting for control over it. It's a coin flip on who's in Yampil at any given moment. And we caved. I think maybe around May 3rd. We're like, all right, Russians hold Yampil. And then we read something on May 12th. Russians capture Yampil. And I'm just like, F my life. Are you serious? F my friggin' life. That was another lesson too. I ain't following the herd. When we know we're right, we have one right now where it's like, no, we know we're right. And we're holding on to this. And again, people who watch our channel know we've made a couple of mistakes and we've made TikToks. We've made dedicated TikToks. Hey, we told you this yesterday and we were wrong. And here's where we were wrong. And here's what we got right. And this is why we got it wrong. And we're going to work to make sure and improve our process so that we don't make these mistakes in the future. And every now and then in our situation reports, there'll be little things. Like, for example, we might say, this area was hit by SRBMs short-range ballistic missile. And then we find out the next day it's a cruise missile. We actually call out those errors. People who get our situation reports know we do. And we will put a note say, errors and omissions. Yesterday we reported that 4 short-range ballistic missiles hit the town of fill in the name blank town. We have learned today that those were cruise missiles. And we thank you for your understanding. And we apologize for making this error. And we will work better at it. And again, people who read our situation reports know these go into reports. And if you go through our channel, you will see there are videos where we got this wrong. We're wrong. And this is where we're wrong. We haven't had too many of them because we're very careful. But Yam Peel is one that's like we should have just held our guns. And yeah, I'm pretty convinced actually right now that Russia controls Yam Peel finally. But anyway, this is an area we're not going back and forth. Lyman itself, Russia's just doing what Russia does. They're bombing it to dust. They're just grinding the town to dust because that's what they do. They just grind the town to dust. Well, that's because the Ukrainians hide in schools. We've seen so many videos of Russian troops in schools and in hospitals and in houses and parking their tanks right by schools, right by stores, right by office buildings, right by homes. So spare me. Spare me the faux outrage. Yes, Ukrainian forces do it too. It's called war. It sucks. It's terrible. But to sit there and go, we don't do that. Like, really? Solomon Island, I see your thing here on the Solomon and China thing. I don't know enough about it, right? It is kind of interesting to me. Absolutely. I'm going to say it wrong. Bakhmut. Oh yeah. That's not going to be a pushover there. That's that's everything. That's the linchpin. Ukraine loses Bakhmut. They lose everything from the Luhansk border east. And Ukraine knows that. I would suspect that Bakhmut is a fortress. This is actually part of the reason why Russia's like, yes, Slavyansk, we want to go around that because even the Russian Ministry of Defense said Ukraine has turned Kramatorsk and Slavyansk into a 170-kilometer, meaning the outer perimeter, a 170-kilometer fortress. The Russian Ministry of Defense literally said, Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, nope. That's a nope. No, nah. That's why they're trying to go to Lyman. They're trying to bypass it. And this is why they're ultimately not going to win. You just love Ukraine. No, I'm spitting truth. Okay, let's go back to the early days. Let's go back to 12 weeks ago. Russia invades. They want to capture Kyiv. They didn't want to capture... You're rewriting history, Bubba. I'm sorry. They wanted to capture Kyiv, and they wanted to do it in 3 or 4 days. So they start coming down from Belarus. They're coming down on the west side of the lake and on the east side of the lake. On the east side of the lake and the river, I say lake, it's big ass reservoir. You got Chernihiv. Chernihiv was the key to Kyiv. Was the absolute key to it. Now, when they started going down through the Chernobyl exclusion zone, we expected that because that was the easier way to go. Because that area wasn't as defended. It was lightly defended because there isn't as much infrastructure because it's the Chernobyl exclusion zone. And you have this natural barricade of radiation, of which the Russians decided wasn't a big deal. And so they started going down on that west side. And then they got to Bucha, Irpin, right? And at the same time that they are Zerg rushing down this side, and it's not looking good, right? They just roll right into Chernobyl within the first 24 hours, and they're still rolling south. And they're bypassing Chernihiv. And me, immediately, as a data geek, I'm like, this is a colossal mistake. And what I kept expecting was that they would establish a position, but not as close to Kyiv as they did, and then move to take Chernihiv, turn that into a logistical center So they have a ground line of communication, GLOC, which is a supply line. If they capture Chernihiv, they have protected ground line of communication, and they have a logistical center. And all the roads connected there. Chernihiv was everything for Kyiv. And we're going to bypass it. Well, we don't need it. And then they landed, right? They landed the VDV, the airborne troops at Hostomel. And what did we learn? Hostomel was a disaster. It was a complete disaster. There's videos, there's survivor stories, there's security cameras, there's satellite images, there's everything that happened at the base there. It was a disaster for the VDV. And we know it was a disaster. And when they landed there, for me, and I really avoid playing armchair general, for me, it was like, I get it now. I see what they're doing. They want to capture this airport. And then what I was thinking they were going to do. They're going to capture this airport. They're going to move out. They're going to create an umbrella. And what I expected was that the Russian Air Force was going to pour in and take out the air defenses, because this is what the United States would do. This is what most NATO countries would do. We're going to wipe out the air defenses, and then we could just start flying troops into Hostomel because we have air superiority. And now we're in a position where we could just start flying in troops. And that was the plan. Oh, wait a minute, but they forgot something. They forgot the air superiority part. They left that part out. And I know, look, I know even the pro-Russian people are like, where the hell is our Air Force? I'm with you there. I'm as baffled as, this is an area, if you're like in the tank for Russia, I am as baffled as you are. Where's the Russian Air Force? And why don't they have air superiority? They don't have an air dominance. Yes, they do have air dominance. You're lying. No, they don't. You know they don't, because if they did, they would be flying all over the place. They wouldn't be flying at 100 feet with the pilots biting their nails if there's going to be friggin' 10 Stinger missiles up their tailpipe at any second, which is exactly what the Russian Air Force is doing right now. They don't have air superiority. They barely have air dominance. Ukrainian Air Force is flying sorties into the Donbass. That's kind of all you need to know on the situation of air dominance. They just lost another Su-34 yesterday. Russia had another. Man, if you haven't heard that radio, that's chilling. The pilot, communicating, man, that's a chilling recording. He effed up. That pilot effed up. He didn't want to bail. He did not. There was like this conversation. He didn't want to eject. Now, something we don't know. We don't know what altitude he was hit. He may have been in altitude he couldn't eject. But there was like in the conversation, there was this debate on whether to eject or not. And it ends with a blood curdling scream. It's a human being. I get it. You're just, you like Russia. No, it's a human being. You're listening to a human being. Don't ever, if you start losing sight of that, you're losing your humanity. And then you need to step back. That's a human being dying. And it's on recording. And his last second is absolute terror. And it's horrible. It's a horrible thing to listen to. And it's not sympathy for Russian. Fucking pilot doing his job. His job is killing people. I get it. He's probably targeted civilians. I get it. He got what he's coming to him. I get it. It's still a horrible thing to listen to. And if you reached a place where you're just good, you need to step back. Because and if you lose your humanity, you start becoming what you hate. Don't ever forget that. The minute you start losing your humanity, you gotta step back. That's both sides. You're on the Russian side, good. Yeah, kill them all. You need to step back. And if that's what gets you, yeah, you should go talk to someone professional, because that's not how normal people think. It's not good. But they don't have air superiority. So what happened? They don't get Hostomel. I mean, yeah, they hold it, but it's useless. The airport's useless to them. Within the first 48 hours, the airport's useless. And this is what we thought. They're going to come in. They're going to come in from the south through Chernobyl, and they're going to connect. And then they're going to try and take Chernihiv. And then they'll take Kyiv because they've secured the ground line of communication, the supply line. They've set up the logistical center. Nope. We're just going to try to Zerg rush across the Irpin River. And we, of course, know the rest of what happened. They made multiple failed bridging attempts. Does this dance music sound familiar, by the way? Ukraine blew up the bridges. Russia made multiple over and over and over again bridging attempts over the Irpin River. They all ended in disaster. Every single one of them. They got fought to a standstill. And then Ukraine started the slow counteroffensive. Their supply lines fell apart. They had no ground line of communication, no GLOCs supply lines. They never secured Chernihiv. They never secured the supply line down the east side of the right. They didn't have the backup supply line. And then they tried to do this. Well, we'll just go from Sumy. We're just going to go all the way across half of Ukraine in a column that's only 20 kilometers wide. And we're going to try to take them from the east. What could possibly go wrong with a 200 kilometer long, 20 kilometer wide column with completely exposed flanks? What could possibly go wrong? Oh, I don't know. You just start getting attacked from the north and the south at every other side until that column falls apart and your troops start getting surrounded in Brovary and other areas. Personally, my view is Ukraine let them go. Because they just wanted them gone. And I think that's a mistake. I think they should have captured those troops northeast of Brovary that were completely surrounded. They got sucker punched and they let them go. They let them evacuate. They should have captured them. I'm playing armchair general, but I'll play armchair general stuff in the past. I'm not going to play armchair general stuff in the future. Chernihiv was everything. Why am I beating this into the ground? Kharkiv is everything for a Zoom. Don't have Kharkiv contained. You can't hold a Zoom. If we could talk to the German generals from 1943, they would agree with that statement because they made the exact same mistake. The Germans made literally the exact same mistake in a Zoom and in Kharkiv. Identical. And Russia's making literally the same mistake that the Germans did. It's kind of stunning to watch. They don't have that. They don't have the ground. They don't have the secure ground lines of communication. And I know the people that are pro-Russian, it doesn't matter because they're on the west. They're on the other side of the Oskil. They're on the east side, so they've got that line. It's the same thing. If Ukraine could get all the way to the west side of the Oskil, they could just drop 155 millimeter shells all day long on that line. All day long. It won't be a secure line anymore. And if they lose the Zoom, they can't hold the Donbass because it's moving down and then moving through and around. So this is why, see, now we've gone to full circle and this is why Lyman, they're trying to get Lyman because that's their alternative to Bilorivka to try to cut off. And so they can bypass Slavyansk, but they're going to still have to deal with Slavyansk. And what's going to happen with Ukraine if they become convinced that they might get pinched off? They're going to move some of those forces sitting in Slavyansk because they're already pushing Russians back on the Zoom. And I'm skating on playing general here, but that's an opportunity they have. They're not going to move a brigade, but they might move 1,000 or 2,000 troops. And all of a sudden, Russia is going to be on the wrong side of that line if they do that. But now we've kind of gone around back to the other side. And this is why Popasna is a problem for for Ukraine, but Izum and northern Kharkiv Oblast is a problem for Russia. But they're interconnected. Lose Izum, you can't hold the Donbass. You'll never take Slavyansk. They're certainly not going to take it from the south. Can Russia take Severodonetsk and Luhansk? Yes. If you get our situation reports, that's what we say. And we have an assessment section where we go, this is the assessment. Here's everything we look, and here's what we think is going on. And to summarize our assessments, what we kind of say right now is I'm going to paraphrase very heavily. Russian forces are really beat up. They have major staffing problems. They have equipment problems. They have some logistical problems. It's gotten better than where they were in March, but it's still not good enough. They can do, if they focus their troops in a small area and get really focused, they can have success. Oh, look what they're doing in Papasna. They're focusing troops in a small area. They're taking everything they got and they're trying to push into that. And then we say, do they have the force to take? Absolutely. They can capture Severodonetsk. They can capture Luhansk. Do we think that they can do a mass encirclement of Ukrainian troops? No, we don't think they can. And by the way, Igor Girkin agrees with us, or we agree with him. It just depends on who you read first. And like basically just about any objective analyst agrees with our view also. Can they hold Luhansk? If after they capture it, it's one thing to capture it, right? They captured all this area west of Kyiv. Could they hold it? Could they hold the area around Kharkiv? No. Could they hold around Kyiv? No. Can they hold it around Izum? It's starting to look like no. We're not there yet, but we've seen this 2 other times. We're seeing it for the 3rd time now. Chip, 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 nibble, nibble, nibble. Harass the supply lines, interdict the supplies, peck away at these battalion tactical groups, get in their heads that, we're not safe. We can't sleep at night. Ukraine does a lot of night attacks. Their special forces operations, they're hitting at night. And Russian troops are saying that. We own the day. At night, night is hell. Because that's when the Ukrainians come in. They come in at night. And that's hardcore gets in your head. Because if you don't feel safe, went to sleep, just think about it. Think about any time in your life you've been sleep deprived. How functional are you when you're sleep deprived? You're not. And this really gets in their heads. The other thing is this drone stuff that Ukraine is doing. You're just in a trench and they don't even hear it. They're using these commercial drones. They're flying at 1,000 feet. They can't see them, meaning from the trench. They can't see them. They can't hear them. What they're hearing is the whistle because they're putting fins on these old grenades. They're taking old designed in the 1950s. Soviet anti-tank grenades that nobody uses anymore because RPGs and NLAWs and javelins have replaced the technology. You don't have to get somebody 30 meters from a tank to lob a grenade at them anymore because it's not good for the health of the person throwing the grenade. They're taking these old grenades. They cost about $100. They're taking 3D printers. They're putting fins on them in 3D printers. They've built bomb racks on commercial drones and they've figured out like the targeting. And if you've seen the videos, it's stunningly accurate because of the fin setup they have. And of course, we're seeing the hits. We're not going to see the miss. We know the Russians aren't as good. That's not true. We know the Russians aren't as good because the Russians show a lot more videos. Oh, see, we have this too, but they missed, right? But that's a miss. So, you're not going to just show us the misses. You're going to show us the best you got. So the best you got is a miss. And what we're seeing from Ukraine is they're getting hits. They don't hit all the time. The videos are edited. We're not stupid. We get that. The videos are edited. So we're just going to see the hits. There might have been 5 misses. But when we see the Russian videos, it's like, excuse me, are we actually ever going to see like a real hit? It hit! Yeah, it hit 20 meters from where it was supposed to hit. You can literally see nobody got hurt or the target piece of equipment didn't get hit. You can see it. You're not looking hard enough. Oh, believe me, we look hard. So we know they're not as good. But the Russians are trying, and they'll get better. They will get better. But think about it. You're in a trench. You think you're good. There's no shooting. There's no artillery. There's no boom. You're literally, because you can see in the videos, you're hanging with your bud. You're having a conversation. Some of them, they're cooking their meal. And all of a sudden, a Soviet grade, old anti-tank grenade got turned into a bomb, and you hear the whistle from the fins, 1 or 2 seconds before it hits the ground. Think about what that does to your head. If you, not talking about the concussion part, I'm talking about the psychological part. If you live through that a couple of times, think about what that's doing to your head. That's not true. They're tough. They're human beings. Anybody who's like, that doesn't, you've never been in combat. You've never had anybody throw any munition at you. You've never had a firearm fired at you. I've had flashbang grenades thrown at me. I had one, it's on video, went off 10 feet behind my head. It was like a friggin' movie when it happened. Ears ringing, everything in slow motion, totally disoriented. Somebody like next to me, and I could see their lips moving, and I can't hear anything. Been hit by rubber bullets. This is doing my job. It's being a journalist. This is journalist stuff. Like, literally. I've come home, bruises. Wife, you know, like, where'd you get the bruise? Well, I got hit by a baton. Well, you're wearing your body armor. Yeah, I was wearing my body armor. But that's where I know, he hit me hard. Oh, yeah. I've been in there. I've been in the shit. I had to go to therapy after being in the shit. And I get it. I'm not comparing this to combat. I got a little taste. And I have thrill issues. People that know me know I have thrill issues. And I just got a little taste of it. And I saw it break other people. I saw people literally break. Good journalists, experienced journalists during all the BLM protests of 2020. And I saw it break people emotionally up here in the head. There was a video today. Russia was doing psychological operation. They have a psychological warfare vehicle. Yeah, they have these things. And they're just using the loudspeakers on it to play the Russian national anthem. And it's clearly Russian national because it's an iconic anthem, right? My wife and I were talking about this earlier today, right? It's like in the top 10 anthems of the world. That if people hear Russian national, right? People know the Star Spangled Banner. It's like people know German's national anthem. People know the United States. People know Russia, right? These are Great Britain, Canada, right? People know these. You can play 10 notes. And anybody who's like even watched the Olympics once, oh, that's Germany or that's Russia, or like they get it. And there was comments on this, right, where there's a lot of people is like, well, I don't think that's. I was at a thing where they were using music as a form of psychological operations. Now, it didn't faze me at all. And there were other people that were just like, this is a joke, right? But there were other people. There's some of the protesters. Oh, it was in their head. It was driving them. They were. It's very interesting how people react to certain stimuli. I kind of grew this reputation of being just impervious to pepper spray. Old school malcontents that watch my 2020 stuff, there'd be on times like, and I just start cursing and swearing, right? And I just got a half face of pepper spray. I've got press all over me. They know I'm freaking like just cursing and swearing on this. And then I just keep going. And like, I literally can't see out of one eye. And I'm doing the camera and I'm doing my thing. And then someone will come up to me at the end and they're like, dude, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Why? It's like that whole half of your face, you look like a lobster. I was like, yeah, I got some spice on me. I grew this and there's other people, they cut a whiff of it and they're literally in a ball on the ground. It just all depends. But people that are just like, this doesn't get in their head. They've never been there. It's like these people here in the United States are, Civil War's coming. We're going to come and get all those Jew journalists like you. You just wait and that Civil War starts. It's going to be epic. You're going to wet your pants on day one. You're going to absolutely wet your pants because you've never experienced. Because people that wish for this stuff have never experienced it. Because the people that experienced it go, you're out of your flipping mind, bro. Tear gas hits harder than tear gas definitely hits harder than the OC. Tear gas sucks. But same thing. I got tear gas a couple of times. Actually, I never got tear gas once. It's funny. I find it was really hard to get a full face respirator. I didn't have a full face respirator. I started my coverage. And by the time I got my full face respirator, a lot of the cities had stopped using tear gas because there were so many complaints from people that lived in the area. Because the problem is that the tear gas wafts into the homes. And you can't get rid of tear gas. If tear gas gets into your home and it permeates like into your carpets and there's no way to get rid of this. The way you solve this is you rip your carpet out, you throw all your furniture out, you throw your drapes out if you have drape. That's how you solve tear gas. There were times when I come home spicy and I tell my wife, I was like, hey, can you leave me I need a black trash bag to the front door. And just make sure, I'll let you know when I'm coming in. I don't want you around because I'm spicy. And if it was tear gas, couples of tear gas, I went to the bag, it was just thrown out. Clothes were thrown out. And I quickly just bought clothes I didn't care about. I just started buying cheap crap at Old Navy. Because then it was like, if it gets smeared, I could just throw it out. I did F up with some pepper sprayed clothes, put it in the bag, ran the bag upstairs, put it on the floor in the laundry room. A few days went by. I was like, what's in this bag? Opened the bag, totally basically pepper sprayed myself for a second time and opened the bag. Hardly misled on Russia's strength. Yeah, I think we were horribly misread on Russia's strength, and I think Russia was misled on Russia's strength. There's some estimates that are putting that they've lost 30% of their combat strength, not in Ukraine. The whole ground forces, and not reserves, active duty, right? There's a lot of caveats to this, that they've lost about 30% of their combat strength. That doesn't mean they lost 30% of their people, right? Because things are force multipliers, right? A tank is a force multiplier. A tank is a lot more than the 3 people inside the tank. Russia has 3, United States has 4, because they have the autoloader. That's why the turrets go into low Earth orbit. That's why I remember we get a couple of these videos of turret launches that are just. There was the one in Mariupol. That turret's still orbiting Earth right now. That was. Whew. And at least that crew, it was bye-bye. They didn't know what the heck happened to them. Anyway, a tank's a force multiplier, right? Because the tank creates more oomph than the 3 people inside the tank. They have more oomph than 3 guys with rifles and hand grenades, right? They're force multipliers. So that's why it's very important when you say 30% combat strength does not mean 30% soldiers got code 200 discharges. That means they've lost, when you consider force multipliers, because Russia's lost about 25 to 30% of their active duty tanks, not the reserve fleet, active duty tanks that are just ready to go. They've lost 25 to 30% of all of them. Not what they dedicated to. They've lost about 55% of what they've dedicated to Ukraine. That's not true. Yeah, it is true, because the Oryx database uses photos, geolocations, scrubs for duplicates. And then there was a deep review that was done that found that they miss about 20% because everybody knew they weren't seeing, because of their requirements to have photo, visual, and geolocation provable information on, yes, this tank was destroyed, and yes, they count for Ukraine also. Ukraine's number of tanks are actually increased, not decreased, because they're getting a bunch of tanks from a bunch of countries. Russia's lost about 55% of the tanks that they dedicated initially for the Ukrainian invasion. They were like, okay, we're going to go with 1,200, and they've lost 700, and they've actually, when you do that 20%, they're actually more around 875, so they've lost close to 2/3. Yeah, they're bringing in more tanks because they have about 2,800 that were available. Again, that's not truly a third. No. That includes the reserves, and that includes things like these rusty T-64s that they were planning to scrap 5 years ago anyway, and the military was so broke they didn't even have the money to scrap them, right? T-64 tanks are pretty worth. We know this because Ukraine at the very start of the war, they lost a bunch of T-64 tanks because they're ancient and they were upgraded, but they're not remotely modern tanks anymore. The Air Force has doubled also. I'm looking at you here. Wonder if a coup. I know, it's like, oh, there's a coup. And we're like, no, there isn't. I'm going to wind this up here because I do want to get to bed. we've talked about mutually assured destruction, instability paradox a few times. We've had this in our situation report, and today in our situation report, we're like, we kind of feel we've gone in the right direction for the first time in a while. So, what's the mutually assured destruction, instability paradox? We have a video about it, but I won't make you go hunt for the video. So, mutually assured destruction. Basically, United States, right? We got nukes. 1945, we used 2 of them. See, we got this. Russia steals the recipe. They had a bunch of spies in the Manhattan Project. If you watch there's a video at the Potsdam meeting where you've got Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin in that order. And Roosevelt leans over and he tells something to Stalin, and Stalin just kind of nods and has like a little twinkle in his eye. What they're saying, what the word is that he was telling Stalin that, like, we got something that's just gonna change this whole game. But the reason that Stalin was like, is because he already knew. He knew everything. I knew everything, and we also have a lot of your work. So then they get the bomb. And then so they're building bombs, we're building bombs, and then eventually there are so many bombs that are like, oh, we can destroy each other, right? There's enough for us to destroy each other. Hence, there is mutually assured destruction. And the premise of mutually assured destruction is we have all these nukes and we can destroy you. Oh, yeah? Well, we have all these nukes and we can destroy you. Yeah, well, we could destroy your nukes first. We have so many nukes that if you try to destroy our nukes first, the leftover nukes will be able to destroy you, and you won't have any nukes because you just used them trying to destroy all of us. Oh, yeah? Well, we're going to build so many nukes that after we destroy your first nukes, we'll be coming in to destroy your second nukes. And then reaches a point where they're like, you know what? Like, after we kind of do this a couple of times, there's nothing left anyway. We're just destroyed. So then you move into, we're never going to use our nukes because if we do, then you're going to use your nukes and we're both destroyed. No winner. War Games, 1983. Strange game. Would you like to play a game of chess? This is the premise of mutually assured destruction. The mutually assured destruction instability paradox was a theory that's now playing out before our eyes, which was, what if you have 2 belligerents, the United States, Russia, that are in mutually assured destruction? But one of them goes, you know what? I can do bad stuff without my nukes, like invade a sovereign country for a BS reason, and you're not going to do anything about it. Because if you do, I'll use my nukes, and then you'll use your nukes, and we're all destroyed. And I'm pretty confident that because I have all these nukes that you're just going to let me get away with whatever I want to do because I can destroy you. And if you go to destroy us, then we'll just destroy each other and then you lost anyway. And you probably just want to stay alive. So you're going to let me do terrible things. And that's what the mutually assured destruction instability paradox. It's a paradox, right? We're not going to go to war because you'll destroy us. Yeah, but if I do like a little war, even if I'm awful while I'm doing that little war, I get away with it. And the paradox then becomes mutually assured destruction doesn't work anymore. And then it starts to get really scary if you start getting people in a place where they're like, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. So why do I feel that first of all, I didn't feel like we're on the edge of the cliff here, right? If there were 10 steps to get to, I hope you have a bunker in the yard and 18 months of food. And I hope that bunker is 50 feet underground with a lot of granite and air filters in it, because otherwise you're lying to yourself. If you say there were 10 steps to get there, we were like at step 2, right? I think we've gone back a step, and I'll tell you why. Miley, General Miley, Joint Chiefs of Staff, his counterpart, Russia, Gerasimov, essentially their Joint Chiefs of Staff, they talked on the phone today. For the first time since the war started, even since before the war. Both sides, United States and Russia, both sides said it was a long phone call, respectful, productive. They talked about things of mutual interest, which I would presume, and this is my opinion, but my opinion is part of things of mutual interest is, I know we haven't been answering the deconfliction phone because they turned that back on and Russia was not answering the phone. And that's not good. They're supposed to answer that phone. We've been more mad at each other historically than we are right now, and they still answered the phone. And we're calling to test the line and they're not answering the phone. So I suspect that the deconfliction line is getting answered for the daily test again. Nobody's saying if it is or isn't. That's my opinion. I have a feeling that there was the conversation of, we don't want misunderstandings, right? We want to have these lines of communication. Nobody wants this, to escalate to this point. I'm sure Gerasimov probably pleaded his case like, you guys shouldn't be involved. This isn't your thing. And I'm sure that Miley said, you're being monsters. You're committing genocide. You're doing these horrible things. And this is more than just some BS territorial thing that you're doing here. I'm sorry to tell you, but you guys are the bad guys. I'm suspecting that's what the conversation was. The other thing is the next rung of the ladder down. Secretary of Defense's, they're started talking. They had their first phone conversation 84 days. Their two counterparts. That was last week. So they're starting to talk again, and they have not talked in months. And that makes me feel a lot better, because this is what was going on in the Cold War. And if they're talking at that level, and both sides are saying, including, because how's Russian state media going to portray this? They're going to want to try to portray NATO and the United States to their public as monstrous as possible. So if Russian state media is saying it was constructive, it was respectful, it was long, they talked about things that were of mutual interest to the United States and Russia. What could the United States and Russia have mutual interest in? Yeah, I would probably say not destroying each other, right? So I think this was a pretty positive sign that we kind of are stepping back from here. The Transnistria thing was another thing. Maybe when we got to the peak of Transnistria, we might have gone up to like another rung. We might have gone up to 3. We're concerned at some of these cruise missile attacks that are happening 20 kilometers, 15 kilometers from, Polish border. Russian munitions, especially some of these older, like they're using some stuff that is, tier 3 stuff now, not really accurate. And they're using anti-ship missiles to hit ground targets. So there's a lot of signs that, right? You're not hearing a lot about calibers anymore. Where did the Caliber cruise missiles go? They're running out, right? We're hearing KH-101s, we're hearing KH-59s, we're hearing about these anti-ship missiles hitting ground targets. There are not a lot of calibers anymore. They're running out. And they're not going to use them up to 0, because if they were to go where we don't want to go, they're going to need some of those to deliver nuke payloads. So they can't use all of them. They just can't. And some of these things, they're not very accurate. And some of them are old. And, they're not going where they want to go. One of these missiles lands in Poland. Poland's not having it. They're not. They're going to be screaming Article 5 on the top of their lungs, even if a cow gets blown up. And this makes me nervous. This is the one thing where I'm like, I don't like this. This is stupid. This is dangerous. It's war. I get it. They feel it's a legitimate target. But your munitions are not super accurate. And you're one mistake away from things going really, really sideways fast. Because Poland's not going to be like, okay, we understand. It was a mistake. I'm borderline thinking Poland's just looking for an excuse. Like they're just like, Article 5, give us an excuse. I want to push the Article 5 button. Can I push it? I seriously. That's where I think Poland's head's at. They're playing with fire. Firing that close over there, they're playing with fire. All right, we'll do questions for a couple of minutes. Yeah, Poland is not playing. And, look at Poland's history and how many times they've been screwed over militarily. They're not playing because they're just not interested in being the next feather in the cap, which that's what it'll be. If Russia takes Ukraine, Moldova and Poland's next. There's no question. No, it's not true. Putin's flat out said it. He wants to reestablish the old Soviet Union. He's flat out said it. He said the quiet part out loud over and over again. All right, a few minutes for questions. Syria, Syria, I'm glad you brought this one up. This is one where I'm just like, Yeah, this is one where I'm just like, man, Russia, man, you just keep stepping on you keep stepping on your own feet here. There's all this kind of, right? Syria's been a hot spot forever, and you have Iranian organizations, that Iranian-backed militias that operate in Syria that fire into Israel. And this has been going on for decades, right? Golan Heights. And Israel reaches a point every now and then where they're like, okay, we've had enough of this. And they send up their Air Force and they fly sometimes into Syria. And Syria doesn't like this. And they take out these Iranian-backed militias and they fly back. Well, a couple of days ago, Russia fired anti-aircraft missiles, S-400, at Israeli Air Force planes. And they didn't shoot down any of the Israeli Air Force planes, and Israel destroyed Russian S-400 anti-aircraft sites, multiple. Now, neither side is going to war over this. And don't forget, in 2018, about 500 members of the Wagner Group private military corporation got in a firefight with about 40 or 50 United States Special Forces, and it went horrible for Wagner Group. They lost about 300 mercenaries in that battle. So Russia's already doesn't have a good track record of firing at people in this area, and everyone just kind of goes shrug when it happens. But it wasn't lost on me that the day after this happened, that Israel said, yeah, we're going to help Ukraine a little bit more. That's how they responded. So basically every time Russia's F's up with Israel, Israel's just, okay, we're going to give more aid to Ukraine. Here's the thing about Syria. I can't get into all the nuances with Assad and all of the militias and the YPK, with the Kurds. It's a mess. Look, summarize it. They all hate each other. They're all looking for excuses to yeet each other. And they've been yeeting each other there since they were documenting it in clay tablets and on papyrus scrolls. And they continue to yeet each other there today. It's a mess. Why does Russia give any care about Syria? Because of the Navy base at Tartus. That is the only warm water port that the Russian Navy has. That the water's warm 365 days a year. And they need that so that they can maintain their ships. So the Navy base and the dry docks at Tartus are everything for Russia and that Navy base. And they will support Syria to off the edge of a cliff because of that Navy base in Tartus. Assad's a monster, and that's probably the nicest thing I can say about him. That's like a compliment. That's the nicest thing I can say. It goes downhill from there. No, absolutely not. And the only people I see that are saying, here come the nukes. If you look in the comments, go look in the comments. The people are like, here come, they're going to use nukes. They won't do it. The Russian bot accounts and the Russian troll. It's almost all of them, right? This is fear. This is psyops. This is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And the answer is no. There's no logical reason to do it here. It would be do you think, right, seriously, what do you think China's going to do? What do you think China's going to do? I'm not saying China's going to go to war with them, but China's just going to be like, yo, bros, no, okay? Because, if you become a smoldering radioactive wasteland by NATO countries, all that crap is floating down across us. So, no. You're out of your frickin' minds. Just China alone. What's India going to do? India's got this, and India's nuclear armed. What's Pakistan? Do you think these countries are going to be good, happy with radioactive clouds floating over their country? No. It would be beyond stupidity. And remember this too, even if Putin says, do it, who does it fall ultimately to? It falls onto the military chain of command. And historically, there have been 3 times in history that we know of. 2 with Russia, 1 in the United States. Do it. And it was the military chain of command. It didn't come from presidents. It came from, Abel Archer, damn close. Abel Archer may have come from Gorbachev. So maybe. Abel Archer may have come from Gorby. Read up on Abel Archer, 1983. It's amazing we're having this. It's amazing I'm here to even have this conversation. we were over the cliff. Russia went full commit in 1983. It was a mistake, but the chain of command was like, really? What? Are you sure? We need to talk to someone. And this has happened the other times in history. There's been someone in the chain of command that has gone, wait a minute, time out. Are we really sure in this? Really? And clearer heads have prevailed. So the order could come, but then it ultimately needs to be executed by somebody to follow that order. And so far, history has shown there hasn't been appetite to do it because military professionals know what will happen. There's anybody who says limited nuclear war, they're lying. There is no such thing. It will escalate into an end game. Period. Yeah, but you see, that's the thing. What if there's an accident? It's a valid question. By the fact that they're probably answering the deconfliction line, by the fact that the leaders are talking to each other, that's the whole point. Because where there's the communications that are going on there, this creates this opportunity to at least go, this was an accident. This was an accident. This was a misfire. Whatever. But that's the whole idea behind the deconfliction. And what if they're lying? We're going to figure out real quick if they're lying because we could see every silo, every plane, right, and so can they. So that's how you know. It can be very quickly figured out if it was an accident. And that's why I feel, because it's the whole idea behind the deconfliction line. Did you mean to do that? No, we didn't. I swear to God, man, we're so sorry, bro. We did not mean to do that. You better have, I got receipts. I'm telling you, I got receipts. I'm ready to hand them over. We did not mean to do that. Well, this is the problem, right? Putin's really painted himself into a corner. I think this will be the last question that I'm going to answer. But Putin's really painted himself in a corner here because it's very clear, and I talked about this earlier, in Russia, they're like, yeah, special military operation. NATO's going to come and get us. We don't do this. Who is it? Greetings, comrade. Here is letter. You have been conscripted. Oh, this special operation sucks. So, general mobilization. If they do general mobilization, they're going to lose a lot of. They have to get a lot more authoritarian within their country, like way more, to do like Stalin grade more, like Stalin 1938 after the purge more. Stalin did this big purge in 1937. That's they have to get to that grade with Stalin's 1950 paranoia, which actually I think Putin's almost probably to that level of. He's not quite to that level of paranoia, but Stalin, he's definitely paranoid. Before the Russian people were going to walk off that cliff, if he does general mobilization, support for this war is just going to, because it's going to wait a minute. You said this was a special military operation. You said this wasn't going to be hard. You said they aren't going to fight back. You're saying that they're terrible, but we're winning, and all of this is now we're doing a general mobilization. And what are they going to general mobilize with? T-64 tanks? They're the LNR and DNR troops. They're giving them World War II bolt-action rifles, no body armor, and Cold War steel pot helmets from 1968, which will do nothing in a modern battlefield, but give you a really bad concussion. Really bad. Like you're out of the game. You're not fighting anymore. You'll heal from the concussion, go back, but you're out of the game concussion. Those helmets are worthless. These old steel in modern warfare, they're worthless. It's not true. There's tons of videos there of the militias, completely untrained. These guys are bad health, 40, 50, 60 years old, no body armor, Moisin Nagant rockets. That's a good gun. Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. It's a tremendous, if you're deer hunting. In a 21st century battlefield, this is not a good, they can be snipers. They have iron sights. These are people that have had no weapons training. They are not snipers. That's what they're getting. So what are they going to, they mobilize 1 million people. What are they going to arm them with? With what? They don't have anything. I mean, they do, but it's all, this is the thing. Putin was lied to. Straight up, he was lied to, right? Beautiful yacht, my friend. Thank you so much. I love it. How much? 500 million. I had it built at the same place you did, dear leader. Wonderful. I know how much I pay you. How did you afford this? Good business deals. I got the internet thing and all that's wonderful. How are those tanks you promised you were amazing? Those tanks are great. We've got hundreds of them and we're maintaining them. They're the greatest of everything. And we have private security making sure that nobody's going in it. Wonderful, wonderful. Good. You're doing a great job. Yes, let's go have some fine caviar. It's $1,000 an ounce. Very rare stuff. Hard to afford on your salary. Oh, no. Honest, dear leader, I've made some good investments. They weren't buying the equipment. We know that. You know that. Look, you could be up Russia's ass and in the tank for them, and you know it. You know it. He was lied to. I firmly believe that when this started, he believed what he was being told. Right. You're lying! Okay, where's the Su-57? They have 12! 4 are operational. Yeah, they have 12. The plane came out in 2010. They have 12 and only 4 are operational. The other 8 are prototypes because they can't build them. They don't have the money. They don't have the resources. M14 Armada tanks. They have 6. 6. They were going to have 3 in the parade. Victory Day parade. You watched the Victory Day parade, right? They were going to have 3. They had 2 because 1 was broken down. Yes, it was true because it was in the Victory Day parade live from Russia. So what, Russia made it up? 1 broke down. So they have 6. They got 3 for the parade and only 2 ran. The hydraulic system went out on the second one, or the one that broke down and couldn't steer. How many Ka-52 helicopters they have? 113 and they've lost 15 of them. They've lost over 10% of their fleet and they have terrible vibration problems. Like, where did the money go? And they don't have a big military budget as is. Did you know that Russia has the 4th largest military budget? Not the 3rd, 4th. India is number 3. India's military budget is bigger than Russia. And India was Russia's biggest customer for buying military equipment. And recently, India had a big order for helicopters. And they're like, you know what? Canceling the order. Got nothing to do with the war. Honest. We're going to build them ourselves. We've decided we're going to build this stuff in our own country. We want to be able to build it. We're not going to buy from you anymore. Yeah. The United States, this is how small the Russian military budget is. The United States budget, just to maintain the nukes, just the nukes, is the same size as the entire Russian military budget. And that's just what we spend to keep our nukes operational. That's how small the Russian military budget is. They don't have a navy. Russia doesn't have a navy. What do you mean you don't have a navy? They have an aircraft carrier that's never worked, that is permanently in dry dock. It's not operational right now. They have 4 missile cruisers. They had 5. They got 4 now. That's it. Another one is in the same design as the Moskva, which has now been proven to be a very outdated and bad design. They do not have a blue water, a green water fleet, right? Deep ocean fleet. They have a blue water fleet close to their coasts. They can't assemble. Thailand, in theory, could assemble a carrier battle. I just learned this, that Thailand has an aircraft carrier. Did you know this? It's a total boondoggle. People are like, this is really just the royal family's private yacht. It just happens to be an aircraft carrier. But Thailand has an aircraft carrier. Who'd have known? Thailand can, in theory, Thailand could assemble a carrier battle group, like a NATO-style carrier. Russia can't. Carriers are an anachronism. No, they're not. Carriers are still one of the most powerful ways to project force on the planet because they're a mobile Air Force base. That's what a carrier is. And it isn't the carrier, it's everything else around it that provides the protection to that carrier, plus the combat air patrol that runs over it. They're not an anachronism. They've aged incredibly well. Their military is just, the other thing is their logistics system is weird. Their logistics for moving a lot of material very quickly over long distance on land, Russia is amazing. Seriously, that part of their logistics is some of the best on the planet. See, I just call it for what it is. I just call the truth. And when it comes to moving stuff over great distances on land, Russia has some of the best logistics of militaries on the planet. You could argue possibly the best logistics on the planet, where it all falls apart because it's all dependent on rail. So within Russia, this works great. Their gauge, how far the tracks are apart, the gauge of the tracks are different. Russia has a different gauge than the rest of Europe. This was a decision after World War II because now the trains can't go in. So once they leave their country, they have to have engines and cars of a different gauge. So now this is falling apart a little bit, right? Because they have to change the gauge. And then where this really falls apart is the last mile, getting the stuff off of the trains to where it needs to go. And this is where their logistics are just horrible. So where Russia's really good and sincerely, possibly the best in the world is, we got 300 tanks 2,500 miles away. And we need to get these 300 tanks 2,500 miles in a week. This is not an easy thing. And we need to get this other train where the ammunition is 1,000 miles away to the same spot at the same time. And we have to get these soldiers who will help get all of this prepped. They're 700 miles away. In another place, we got to put them on a train and have them show up 24 hours before. And Russia's amazing at this. Where it all falls apart is when it goes to trucks. Then it just crumbles. But their ground logistics in Russia is amazing. And that's important in a country that covers, technically, I know, I say 10 time zones, it's 11. I'm like, yeah, I know, Kaliningrad. It's the little thing over there is the 11th time zone, but it's a little island. So yes, pedantically 11, contiguous 10 time zones. They are using World War II tactics. This is actually one of the reasons why they're totally failing. They're completely using World War II tactics. That's what they're using in Papasna. This is what they're using in Papasna is German Blitzkrieg World War II tactics. We used artillery. We punched a hole. We took armor and backed by motorized infantry. We Zerg rushed through the hole, and then when we got through the hole, we're fanning out to push the lines out, to push those defensive wider, so then we can go and spread out this way, so then we can advance the artillery, rinse, recycle, and repeat. They are absolutely using World War II strategy. And it's not working very well because they're not bringing in infantry, straight up infantry, grunts with guns walking on the ground. They're not bringing in infantry to support those armored vehicles. And this is where it's all falling apart because they're getting shredded there. You need that infantry. And this is something that Patton knew. General Patton knew this in World War II. Rommel actually understood this. Rommel understood this actually pretty well, but Rommel's bosses wouldn't let him execute this. If you go back and look at history, Rommel is actually, you can go back to Rommel, and Rommel is the one who's like, you need infantry supporting tanks, and this is why. German high command wouldn't let them do it, didn't fit with their view, and things worked until it didn't work for them. And Patton understood this need of having infantry to support tanks. The infantry goes in, and what they're providing protection for is infantry that have anti-tank weapons and take out the tanks. This gets another thing where it gets into my opinion. I don't think, there's been talks. Are tanks irrelevant, right? Has the NLAW and the Javelin and drones made tanks an anachronism? Are they now, relegated like battleships, right? Battleships became this outdated concept by the 1950s. And the aircraft carrier became the new thing. I don't think tanks are that's it for the era of tanks. Russia is really misusing their armored vehicles. Tanks aren't good in urban warfare because there's just so many places where you can drill a tank from so many different angles in an urban warfare environment, and they're not supported by infantry. So it's not that I think tanks are anachronism now. What I think the issue is here for tanks is they're really being misused. They can't. How fast can Russia start? They can't. They have the metal, right? But they don't have the electronics. And China's not. China is playing this so smart. China wants Russia weakened. And it should be obvious to anybody. That's not true. They're our friends. They want Russia weakened. Because then China will have greater sphere of influence in the eastern half of Asia. We think of Russia as a European country. I mean, yeah, Moscow, but right, it goes all across Asia. And China wants them weaker. So China's like doing we're buddies. You want to buy our oil? Come, back. And I know they're talking like, you want to buy cheap oil, and China, but China didn't buy any cheap oil in April. They didn't buy any cheap oil in May. They didn't sign any new oil contracts. China made their thing. Companies, you're going to stand with them. They're all pulling out. All the Chinese companies are very quietly, slowly pulling out of doing business with Russia. Weapons. Can you help us? Not really. There's this thing, like, you shouldn't be there. And yeah, I know, NATO shouldn't be helping you. And you two should really talk this out. You and Ukraine should talk this out. We're not going to, we'll sell you some tires. Would you like to buy some tires? They're excellent tires. We'll give you great discount. You know what? We don't want your tires. We got burned on the Chinese tires things. China's not doing much for Russia, right? Oh, they're going to give, they didn't give, they're going to do the credit card clearing. They're going to give them the banking. They didn't do any of this stuff. They want them weak. And they can see the handwriting on the wall. I mean, what else has China learned? They've learned everything the rest of the world learned. Oh, so the only reason that you're even relevant is because you have a nuke arsenal. By the way, I was saying that years ago, that Russia was a regional power at best, and that the only thing that made them a superpower was their arsenal. If you take that away, if you were to take that away, Russia is irrelevant literally irrelevant as a military power. And that's what's playing out before our eyes. Yeah, China's not teaming up with it. Don't forget, China and Russia, they gone to war a few times. Russia took big chunks of China and pulled it into Russia. And people who are ethnic, that their ethnicity, because there are people in Russia and their ethnicity is more to the Southeast Asian parts of the world. There's some people are Korean, there's some people China, or there's some people, of Mongolian descent, and these people are treated awful. We don't have racism in Russia. Yeah, sure. I could line up a whole bunch of Russian Jews for it, including Russian Jews that, by the way, support the war, that will flat out tell you they left Russia because of the racism. Russia has a wicked racism problem there, and they treat these people again that are these of these Southeast Asian continent minorities are treated terrible. And if you look at your history, Russia took big chunks of real estate from China. China holds grudges. If you don't think China doesn't hold grudges, talk to Japan. because China's still holding a grudge over Nanking from 19, like serious grudge. This is like, for instance, Toyota, Toyota, like the whole car thing, right? Like Volkswagen and Buick were the high ones. And then Toyota came in and was like, there you go. Toyota's going to take over. Right. And they were like the 14th. Yeah. You're like a traitor if you buy a Toyota in China, because that goes back to World War II. China holds grudges. They're not buds. If you look at the history, they are not buds. They do not have a buddy-buddy history. And they just want them weak because more sphere of influence there. They have that. I talked about this earlier. This is funny. They have any planes left in Russia? I talked about this earlier. I'm like, I know this is an area where the pro-Russian people are going to agree with me. Where the hell's the Russian Air Force? Because I know the pro-Russian people are going, where the hell's the Russian Air Force? Where is it? I'm not saying it to be snarky. Like, seriously. This was what I think I know for me, this was a big reason when all this started. I was like, yeah, Ukraine's going to get completely waffle stomped here. Because what I thought was going to happen was the same thing that the United States has done in their BS invasions of countries like Iraq, because I'm going to call it like I see it. I love George Bush's little Freudian slip there. George Bush, by the way, is a tortured soul. That's why that Freudian slip happened. He is racked with guilt. And I'm not apologizing for my country. I am not apologizing for George Bush. I'm just stating, because he's like on this mission. Like, I don't know if you know this, right? He is doing these paintings. He's actually a really friggin' good painter. And he is painting portraits of every soldier, one at a time, for families that died in Iraq when he was president of the United States. This is penance. He is racked with guilt over that, and he should be. I'm glad it haunts him, because it should haunt him, because it was BS. But when the United States did their BS, the first time wasn't BS. The second time was BS. When the United States did their BS invasion of, what did they do? They came with the Air Force. They wiped out command and control, communications, anti-aircraft systems, and radar. Then they moved in with the ground troops. Right? I'm not rewriting history here. You could be all the way up Vladimir Putin's rear end to the point that you're his personal proctologist. You can't say that this isn't true. And you probably can't tell me that that isn't what you expected was going to happen in the first 48 hours. I know that's what I expected, because I thought Russia had this. Again, the Su-57 is a disaster, but, Su-34 is pretty damn solid. Generation 4.5 plane, Su-35. People are like, the Su-20, the A-10's really old too. The Su-25 is a good ground pounder. I would argue, and I know people, this is where Russian fanboys aren't going to agree with me. I think the A-10's a better plane. It can take a lot more damage than the Su-25. And it's more maneuverable. The Su-25 has other things. The Su-25 is faster. It can get on station faster. It can stay on station longer. So there's pros and cons of both of them. And the A-10 goes brrr. It's got burp. That Gatling gun is just. What happened? The other thing too, I think we were all expecting was lots of cruise missiles. Not just like, we're going to take out the TV-10 or a TV antenna in Kyiv. Cruise, we're going to destroy a Holocaust memorial in the process. Sorry, because our missiles aren't as accurate as they should be. What happened? And they don't have air superiority. And there's only a couple of areas where you could argue they have air dominance. A lot of areas they have air parity. There are a lot of areas where Ukraine has air superiority. That it's a no-go zone for a Russian airplane. If you flew a Russian airplane in certain parts of Ukraine, it's not coming back. It will come back on the ground in itty-bitty pieces. There are areas there, but there is nowhere in Ukraine except for maybe around the Mariupol, that Azov Sea area. That's about it, where you could say Russia's got air superiority. That if a Ukrainian plane were to fly in that area, it's coming back to the ground in itty-bitty pieces. That's what air superiority basically means. I don't know what, do they, yes, they have an Air Force. I don't know where it went. And they're afraid. They're not willing to fly sorties anymore. They're using standoff weapons. They're not willing to come in. And Russian troops are super frustrated by this. Igor Girkin, again, I keep going back to him. Igor Girkin, totally frustrated by the lack of air support. And this is the other thing that I can't figure out. Back in late April, there was this 72-hour period. There was 3 days where Russia was not doing World War II. They modernized their tactics. They were advancing out of Izum. 3 columns, 3 distinct columns, one going southwest, one going south, one going southeast, moving in concert with each other. They were backed by air support. On the rear, their supply lines were being protected by helicopters. So their supply lines were not being harassed, because if SOF tried to come in, they were getting waffle stomped, and Russia did it literally for 3 days. And then they were like, okay, screw it. We're going to go back to what we were doing. And it was working. It was working. They were making big advances out of Izum. They did it 3 days. They said, screw it, stop, went back to the, and they haven't moved it. I mean, they've moved, but what, a few kilometers? I mean, they've moved, but they weren't moving like they were before. Why did they stop? Right? And they weren't taking L's from the Air Force side. It wasn't like they were getting a bunch of equipment shot down. And they just stopped. Doesn't even make sense. There's so much that they've been doing where you're like, what are you doing? And I know some people, stop helping them. Look, if they're in a state where they're going to take advice from a guy on TikTok on the West Coast of the United States, their military is even more screwed up than what you think. There's no helping them. There's not listening. They're not listening to their own people. They're not listening to their former military leaders who are retired and who are telling them privately, you're doing this all wrong. We are losing. And we are losing badly. That's not true. We're going to have several the next this weekend. You see, so what? You wanted the whole country. That's not true. That was just a feint. That was just a fake. Well, there was a fake out. That whole Kyiv thing, the whole 64-kilometer convoy thing that slowly got blown up over 3 weeks. That was an illusion. That was just, we were psyched. It was a joke. It was a ha-ha. That was just to get ready for the real thing. Wow, that's some weapons grade copium you're drinking if that's where your head's at. I mean, the Serbs and Croat thing, I mean, this goes back to the whole Yugoslavia. They glued them all together in Yugoslavia. They didn't like it. They didn't like it. This is why we had World War I, right? And they haven't liked each other going back before World War I. It's a mess there. And it's on the brink of being a mess there again. And Russia's kind of meddling a little bit over there. Let's lose some. And they've lost some T90s. They have 38 total of their top of the lines, T90Ms. They have 38 total. They've 2 confirmed. We know they've lost 2. So, we only lost 2. You lost 2 of 38. It's not good. That's a lot. When you lose 2 of 38. The Terminators are there. They have 9. They have 9 Terminators, these urban warfare tanks. And they've never really been tested. They were in Syria. Yeah. And every Russian soldier who has been in Syria has gone, this is not Syria. This is way, way worse than Syria. Because they weren't fighting with troops that knew how to fight back. I mean, look at these Chechen TikTok videos. These guys don't even know how to hold a gun. Yes, they do. No. I'm just going to hold it over my... That's no. There's a gun sight on the end of that gun for a reason. It's not just there for show. I'm 2A friendly. I go to the rifle range. I have pew-pews. I've been firing pew-pews since I was 17 years old. I find target shooting relaxing. I'm not as good as it anymore because my eyesight, you get to this age, your eyesight starts to go a little bit. But there's this thing on the end of a gun. It's called a gun sight. It's there for a reason. And when you're just like, okay, is the camera running? Camera's running? Okay, cool. We were fighting. Did you see all those bullets we were shooting? I'm sorry. I actually never heard anybody shooting back before, during, or after you never actually showed me what you were shooting at. And you weren't even aiming at anything. Like, you weren't aiming at anything at all. A 12-year-old who plays Call of Duty on Xbox has more discipline with a gun than what you just displayed with a real gun. It's fake, bro. This is the Chechen videos. The Chechen TikToks, they're just like, they're so fake. I gotta go to bed. He was hitting air. I know there was the one where they shot up the traffic lights and then they still published it anyway. I saw that one. That was one where, that's actually one I was looking for. It was one where I got to this point, I didn't even want to watch the Chechen videos anymore because it's like, there's just nothing here. Like Chechen, they made a video on March 19th. No. March 17th. The Chechens made a video on March 17th. We have captured Azovstal. We've captured it. It's ours. All the way back on March 17th. You can go find the video. And back then, we would look at these videos to geolocate where they are. And then, we geolocate. It's like, you're not even in the plant. Like, what? What are you talking about? You're not even in the plant. You captured it? And then, they made a series of videos and they released, I should say they released a series that were all in that same area. It's like, bros, you just shot a video close to the plant and you shot a few different camera angles and now you're just trickling it out. It's like, dudes. Oh, you captured it on March 17th. Okay. It actually fell on May 18th. So what happened over those 2 months? They totally, yeah. The Czech, yeah, they're real tough guys fighting civilians. And if you infiltrate some of their Telegram groups, and I'm not saying that we did, and I'm not saying that we didn't, but if you infiltrate some of their Telegram groups, the Chechens are really unhappy because they're not in the rear with the gear anymore. They're on the front lines, and they in the real now. And they're not liking the real because they don't know how to fight in the real. They don't, no, see, the geolocation isn't looking for metadata. Geolocation is you're looking, right, there's enough cues because they didn't have operational security. Geolocation is when there's enough cues, enough things that you can look around and go, okay, there's a smokestack here, there's that building here, you can see this antenna over here up on that hill, and then the whole world's satellite mapped. And then you can just look on the satellite maps and go, oh, okay, so here's a building. Oh, yeah, there's a smokestack there. There's a tent on that hill. There's a that building, because you're looking from space, right? Oh, that building has a red roof, bright red roof. Okay. And then you can find pictures in almost anywhere on the planet where you can get down. It's not just Google on street level, but you can get 3D views where you can get down. All of a sudden you can go, yep, it's that building there because there's that window and there's that door. Oh, and then you just know. It's like they were standing right here. That's where they were standing. And then the other thing you can also do with geolocation is, and the person that took this picture was standing over here. That's what geolocation is. It's not EXIF data. It's not metadata. You don't need it. The whole world's photographed. Every square inch of the surface of this planet is photographed. That's how we were the ones who said, hey, they crossed the river. You can go to our Twitter, look for one from yesterday, and we have we circle, here's this, because there were a lot of people that were like, no, they're talking about this town in the Donbass. That's not the same Zakharin. It's a different one. It's like, no, it is not a different one. It is the one on the east side of the Seversky Donets, because here's the house, here's the fence, here's the apple trees, here's the dirt road in front of there. Oh, and when you go to NASA Firms, because that's the wildfire database, there is a red square showing a fire literally right where that house is on the map on May 18th. So NASA Firm says literally this house is burning, and Google Maps shows the apple trees, the fence, and a very because the roof on this particular house is four-sided, like almost like not like a pyramid four-sided, but kind of. So a very unique roof, particularly if you think looking at outer space, right? This house with this four-sided roof and a chimney coming right out, that's very distinctive. And oh, there's that house, and it's on a dirt road, and it's in Zakharine. And the person that took the picture said it's in Zakharine. And so this was our, and they're saying that Ukrainian troops did this. And it's a pro-Russian account. So now, did Ukrainian troops bomb a civilian house? We don't think that's right. I can't say no, 100%, but we think the chances of that are very low. But this is a Russian channel saying Ukraine has seized Zakharine, and here is our receipts. Why would they say Ukraine is seizing Zakharine and look at the terrible thing they did when they could just point to anywhere else where Ukraine is already occupying and just go, look at the terrible thing they did? So, because like it's like, okay, like this is what I was talking about way earlier when we do the social intelligence thing, where we do these reviews, where we will look at pro-Russian stuff, where we'll go, okay, this is informing us things. What is this informing us? What's the hill to climb? Well, the hill you're climbing is Ukraine crossed the river. Now, we've been hearing for days they crossed the river. Now you've given us a receipt. You've given us proof. It's one thing for you to just say they're on the other side of the river, panic. And actually, it was Russian that started this. It was pro-Russian accounts that were like, oh my God, they're on the other side of the river. And we were very skeptical, as a lot of people were, because pro-Russian accounts have started these as rumors. And the whole idea is to try to suck in journalists, suck in open source intelligence. And it was like, no, we're on to you. We're a lot more cautious now. We made one mistake. We had to walk things back because we took it at face value. And then like we found a couple others. Like, yeah, that's BS. We never reported it. And yeah, it didn't pan out. But it's like, you've been saying it for days. Now you just produced a receipt. And the receipt that you're producing is to make a war crime claim. That's why you're doing it. So whether that's true or not, I can't arbitrate that. All I have is a picture or a short video clip. All I have is a video clip and no context on how this happened. But that video clip is in Zakharine. And you're saying Ukraine did this. So the only other possibility is the only possibility left if Ukraine's not in Zakharine is then you staged this and it's all BS. And that's kind of a hard hill to climb. So you probably almost certainly then are telling me the truth that Ukraine took over Zakharine. And again, if you go on our Twitter, we have like the geolocation and like literally the picture that circles. So you can see how you don't need EXIF data. You don't need GIS data. You don't need, of course, it's helpful. Every now and then we get a picture or a video and it has all the metadata and the EXIF data. And we're just like, oh, for the love of God, really? You guys published this picture and you left like all the latitude and longitude and the day and the like seriously. Russian OPSEC is bad. Russia's state media OPSEC is awful. There's this dude. I have to be careful what I say because I want to be able to do lives again in the future. There's this dude. He's with the. I think he's with the Donetsk People's Republic, and I think I don't know if he's a journalist or if he's like a soldier who's kind of like plays journalist. I guarantee he has glasses. He's had more Big Macs than I have. I mean, I get it. I was a lot skinnier a year ago. Too much time at the desk. I need to lose some weight. I freely admit it. But this guy's had more Big Macs than I do. He's not a big boy, but you know, he doesn't exactly look like he's in fighting condition. And he wears like, what's that? No, he doesn't have a red backpack. He's dressed like a soldier. He's dressed like a soldier. He has glasses. They have a little bit of yellow tint on him. He has a face you just want to, you know the type of, like he really is a serious, like he has a real face. And this dude's OPSEC is, we love this dude because his operational security when he's reporting is awful. Like when he puts out a new video, it's like, oh my God, now we get to know right where Russian troops are. He was in Papasna. He was all over Papasna. He was there, like he was there on March 12th. He was in there on March 12th. We've captured Papa Sna. And we were like, oh, you're at train station 1. And that's as far as they ever got. And then he was in there again making videos in April. You know, we're in Papa Sna. And he made this one video. And because we had fact checked him so many flippin' times in Papa Sna, we didn't have to geolocate the video. There were 3 of us. We know exactly where he is. And I was like, really? It's like, yeah, they're like, look at the video. I'm like, he's like 100 meters from the train station. Like, yeah, he's like in the exact same frickin' place. His operational security is so bad. So friggin' bad. Like, this is the dude that I go, this is how I know NATO's not there. Because if NATO was there, this guy would already just be like some kid in Nevada flying Predator drone, drinking Red Bull and eating popcorn and E4. Just, hey, you got another video out. We know exactly where he is. And that would be the end of him in the unit whenever he's in. If you've seen the guy, you know what I'm talking about. He doesn't have a beard. He's always wearing a helmet. So I really couldn't tell you. I think he has lighter hair. He's probably a little younger than me. He's probably like in his 40s, you know, like early 40s. Wears glasses, and he just has a face you just want to. His OPSEC is horrible. Oh, they get posted everywhere. I mean, they're on Twitter, they're on Telegram. This is not hard to find. You want to find a video, you can just go on Twitter, type in a city name. Now, you type in like a little village, right? Some little tiny village, or type in like Vasily, or I'm trying to think of the name here. Is it Oleksandrivka? Oleksandrivka is the Springfield of Ukraine. There must be 100 Oleksandrivkas in Ukraine. So yeah, if you type in Oleksandrivka, you're going to be very unhappy because you get videos everywhere. But like, if you just type in Kharkiv or Luhansk or Severodonetsk, or, you know, just videos, pictures, Telegram, there's Discords, you know, and again, you have to be in the club for some of this stuff, and then some stuff you got to infiltrate. Iran, I don't know too much about like what's going on with Iran. You know, I mean, not like in the geopolitical, there's things I know about Iran, but I couldn't sit here and talk too much about the geopolitics of Iran and what's going on. I know, I know Russia, very heavy sphere of influence. I truly believe that Iran would like to get this deal that they had, right on their nuke program. I really do believe Iran would like to restart it. I think Russia's a barrier to restarting that program. I think Iran's kind of a good example too of that sanctions aren't the be all end all. I really do need to go to bed here. No, this is a defining feature of this dude. How did I learn to pronounce all these names? Oh my goodness, this is the first time. Like I'm like, a lot of practice. And my wife speaks Russian, and there are differences in Russian pronunciation versus Ukrainian pronunciation. Russia, you would say Gostomel. In Ukraine, you say Hostomel, so the H gets a G sound in Russian. But she knows those nuances because she grew up, initially when she grew up pretty close to Ukraine. She was pretty far in the southwest corner of Russia. So she actually knows what a Ukrainian, and I was leaning on her in some stuff beginning, and it just became too traumatic. And so there's other people that we work with. But early on, like she could pick up, like if someone was talking Russian, it's like, no, they have they're speaking with a Ukrainian accent. Like to us, it just sounds like Russian. But to people, when they hear someone speaking English from the United States, they don't pick up a Texas accent, from a Georgia accent, from a Boston accent to, my neutral, I did voice lessons, so I have a neutral Midwestern newscaster accent. which is to say no accent. Although every now and then the Boston accent slips out. People in my inner circle, every now and then they'll rag on me. Every now and then ka comes out. The R disappears. That's a possibility. I think I'm going to make that the last. That's the last question. I think that's a real possibility that Russia may just go mission accomplished at some point when clearly they're not at mission accomplished. I think it's going to be never say never. Could they do a general? Of course they could. They could formally declare war, do a general mobilization, go all in. It's not political suicide for Putin. It's not going to go over well in Russia. The Russian people are, right? Because what are they being told? We're winning. It's going great. Everything is going to plan. Taking a little longer than we thought, but it's all going to plan. And we're winning. That's what the Russian people are being told. We're destroying them. We've destroyed their Air Force 3 times over. I mean, we've shot down more Bayraktar drones than Turkey has built in the last year. Like, I'm not exaggerating on that, by the way. That's the official Russian Ministry of Defense number. We've shot down more Bayraktar drones than Turkey builds in a year. It's going great, right? It's impossible for them to shoot more Bayraktar drones down than Turkey made in a year. That's impossible, right? I hope you understand that. And yeah, Ukraine's official ministry defense numbers are pretty. There's a couple of they do like a more breakdown than Russia does, and there's a couple of numbers on there that actually aren't fantasy. They're probably pretty spot on. Their tank number used to be pretty spot on, and it's up curved into fantasy land. But Russia's numbers are just are ludicrous. The numbers that they're producing. For Ukrainian losses. Thank you so much. I appreciate all that. Are we going to war? No, we're going to do everything to get out of there. What are Russian casualty estimates now? Don't know. Right? Nobody, and it's really hard to count these numbers. And I don't think I'll close with, and I'm seriously going to close with this. Like, okay, you see a tank goes boom, right? We see a video and we see a tank goes boom. And whether it's a Russian or Ukrainian tank, if it's a Soviet-derived, Soviet-designed tank, T-72, T-72, T-80, T-64, they was all designed during the Soviet era. T-90 right at the end of the Soviet era is when they're being designed, right? So Soviet tanks. We know, 3 crew. We know there's a 3-man crew. There's driver, right? We know there's 3-man crew in there. There's driver, commander, and the gunner. They don't have 4. America has 4 because they have the autoloader. You're sitting on a bunch of boom boom, and if something gets in, and then all the boom goes boom, and then it's over. But let's say that tank's parked. We see it, right? It's not moving. Were there 3 crew people in there? Did they run into the woods? Was the tank abandoned? All we saw was tank go boom. Now think about an infantry fighting vehicle, 3-man crew, but it could have 9 soldiers in there. If we're talking about a BMP 80, BMP, and I know I'm oversimplifying because don't get pedantic on, well, this one can have 6 and this one can have I get the different configurations. Let's not get pedantic here, okay? There could be 9 soldiers in there. They could have overstuffed, right? They can fit 9, but in a pinch, they could fit more than 9. Were there 9? Were there 12? Were there none? Was it fully crewed? You don't know, right? So you see a BMP go up, boom. But how do you count the losses? See, this is why you get these ranges. They're estimates. Well, how come Ukraine won't admit to their loss? What do you think? They're fighting a war. Is Russia admitting their numbers either? Why won't Russia admit their? Because they're fighting a war. The United States fabricated their losses. All the countries in World War II fabricated their losses. The United States. Go back to Vietnam, the 5 o'clock follies. Look, if you're not familiar with 5 o'clock follies, do a search. Vietnam, 5 o'clock follies, as you know, the number 5. And look it up. So basically, they would have every day at 5 o'clock, they'd have the press briefing in Vietnam. All the press would come in the room and they would tell them, oh, we killed this many North Vietnamese and blah, blah, blah. And somebody in the press was adding these numbers up because the numbers were BS and it just wasn't right. And they reached a point in the 5 o'clock follies where the numbers of the United States, when you added it all up, they had killed every man, woman, and child in North Vietnam. And clearly they hadn't. And they were like, so, hey, question, we added up all these numbers, and you've killed everybody in North Vietnam. Congratulations. So how come people are still fighting? Look it up. Every country fudges these numbers, and it's hard to count. The other thing that you have is this nuance, because you can get duplicates. Well, how do you get duplicates? Right? It isn't just KIA, code 200s. You have code 300s, wounded in action, right? KIA, WA, code 200, KIA, code 300, wounded in action. If you are counting your people, you're going to care about wounded in action versus, but if somebody is wounded in action, and wounded in action could mean a bandit. No, that's not what wounded in action means. You're out of the game. It does not mean you got a Band-Aid. It does not mean that your sergeant told you to suck it up, Buttercup. You had to leave the battlefield, and you're out of the game for a day at least. That's what wounded in action is. If you're counting your own people, you care about wounded in action. If you're counting the other side, you don't care about the nuance. This is how you get a duplicate. You can have somebody wounded in action, leave, go into the hospital for a couple of days, have a few days pass, and then they go, okay, you going back. They go back, and then they could be a code 200 the next week. They could end up KIA. But now if you think about it, they got counted twice. They got counted as WIA. They count as KIA. Now, for their military that they're in, that matters for record keeping, right? Because could impact things like disability and insurance payments, and what are they going to give the survivor's family, and what does their military record show, and are they considered for medal, right? This is important. But if you're on the other side, you don't care jack squat. And they're not going to know, and nor are they going to care that this person was WA and then became KAA a week later. Likewise, the other side, somebody can be counted as WAA, go to the hospital 3 weeks later because they got an infection, clot, whatever. They never know. They're just counted as WA. It's really hard to count these numbers. And then, quite frankly, you see like these, the autoloaders. If you look for these videos and you've seen them, and these turrets that are going into orbit 200 feet, what is there to count? Like, seriously, what is there to count? There's nothing. There's pieces at best. It's really hard. So that's part of the reason why there isn't clear numbers. It was a little easier earlier in the war, but now things are moving so fast. We just know there's a lot of losses on both sides are saying. There's a lot of losses. Both sides are saying it. It's not Severodonetsk, Popasna. This is an attritional war over there. That's what's going on there. Other sectors, other areas, it's not that simple, right? This is kind of this World War I trench warfare, but it's not attritional. This is just kind of, we're in our trench. You can't get us. Oh yeah, we'll fire artillery at you. You didn't get us. Now we're going to fire artillery at you. That's like what's going on in big areas right now. But, Popasna, Severodonetsk, some areas north and east of Lyman, these are just meat grinders. And both sides are kind of just throwing a lot of meat, unfortunately, at both sides. Yeah, they are, exactly. There's so much corruption in the BTGs. We did a TikTok, and I'm not going to go into it because I am going to go to bed. I'm going to call this. We did a TikTok a few days ago where we explain one of the reasons why Russian battalion tactical group commanders aren't very interested in picking up their Code 200 discharges to send them back. It has to do with money. and how the battalion commanders are paid. It's incredibly corrupt and cynical, and it's true because it's been reported in the Russian state media, because commanders have been fired, you know, fired and criminally charged for this, and it's been reported in Russian state media, and so that's kind of how bad the problem is. We did a TikTok that explains it with receipts, that explains it. So I'm going to go to bed, y'all, because it's West Coast time here. It's almost 1 a.m. and I went way over what I wanted to do. Thank you, everybody, for your support. Thank you, everybody, for the great questions. I hope I don't come back and find out a bunch of our videos were mass reported and run live. That actually happened once. And then I'm going to be talking to my lawyer tomorrow morning, and they'll talk to TikTok's lawyers, and it costs us money. And then we get the videos back, and you just made lawyers rich. And we'll still be here at the end of the day. Thank you. I see all the thank yous. We're here because of you. Really appreciate it. I'm going to close one more time. If you like the work we're doing, if you like independent journalism, if you like thank you. Yes, exactly. If you like fact-based reporting, that is just, here are the facts, even when the facts hurt. There's a few ways you can support us. Best way you can support us, Patreon, $5 a month. You get the sit rep report. There's a bunch of stuff we're on the brink of doing. I have an opportunity actually for a radio show slot. Would be once a week, 450 stations. And it's like a go. I just have to find the time to friggin' start doing it, to be honest. We have somebody who's willing to record our content, our written content turned into podcasts. There's a lot of stuff we're on the brink of getting ready to do. And it wouldn't happen without the financial support of viewers just like you. Man, I sound like PBS right now, but it is true. You can be a patron. We have different levels, but $5 a month actually gets you a lot. It's a bargain. Honestly, I think I've underpriced it at this point. If you don't want to do that, we got a tip jar. You just do the tip jar. We also got a Venmo. You do a little Venmo if you want to do that. And there's an Amazon wish list, but I would be careful because we have some packages I haven't opened. And we haven't gone through and gone no, because we open them on here. People seem to like the package openings, because I'm giddy and happy when we do it. But those are ways that you can support us. And of course, follow, comment, share, let other people know. And with that, I'm going to say, Malcontent out.